We'll go ahead and convene the meeting for
Good morning, Steve.
the Friday morning session of the public session of the Board of Curators meeting. Turning now to the general business agenda. The first item is the report from Dr. Choi, 6,515 miles away from us, but apparently coming in loud and clear. Dr. Choi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Chairman Graham. Thank you.
Everyone, thank you. And Dr. Choi will now let you begin your System President's report.
Thank you very much. We just concluded a very productive visit with our Korean partners. Yesterday, Governor Greitens announced the winners of a startup competition that will bring 5 Korean cybersecurity companies for incubation in Missouri. And this morning, he signed a partnership agreement with the Ministry of Science and Innovation. And earlier in the visit, I established system MOUs with Seoul National University and with Postech, the top-ranked Korean Science University, where they just completed a $400 million linear accelerator to study protein mechanics, among others. And we hope to have opportunities for our faculty and students to use that facility as well. And last evening, we held a reception for 20 distinguished University of Missouri alumni who serve as members of Congress, editors of major newspapers, and faculty at top universities. And it was really gratifying to see their commitment to the system. Next page, please. So I'd like to begin my formal remarks by sharing my appreciation to the academic leaders for their commitment and investment in faculty hiring. As this slide shows, despite the budget cuts, each campus leaders reallocated resources to hire professors to support the important teaching and research mission in fields ranging from dramatic arts to plant genomics. There were a total of 83 tenured and tenure-track faculty and 78 non-tenure track faculty members who were hired during this past year to begin their academic appointments in fiscal year 18. We'll need to continue to make investments throughout the system to grow the areas of excellence. As you saw from my slides during previous curators meetings, we've lost a significant number of faculty members due to retirements and resignations during the past 5 years. Next page, please. I also want to update you on the search for several important positions. Later today, there will be an announcement identifying the committee and process for the UMKC Chancellor. I expect to name a permanent chancellor in January of next year. So it's a very aggressive timeline, but I'm confident that we'll have a significant number of outstanding candidates who are going to apply for this position. It's also important to note that we will not be using an external search firm for this particular search. Also, during the week of October 9th, I will announce the selection of a chief lobbyist for the system. There were 5 finalists who were interviewed this week, and the key focus for this position, for this individual and the office, will be to rebuild the relationship with legislators throughout Missouri. We also selected a federal lobbying firm, Clark Hill, and Kevin Kelly, the principal, will work with our faculty and academic leaders to develop strategies for projects ranging from the TPMC to other defense and health projects as well. And this lobbying firm, the cost for this lobbying firm will be at a level of about $120,000 per year, thereby saving the university more than $480,000 per year from previous years. Next slide, please. During the week of September 11th, we held town halls throughout the system to discuss the results for the climate survey conducted by Rankin and Associates. Rankin and Associates have conducted more than 200 such climate surveys throughout the United States. And on September 18th, all 2,500 pages of the report and 1,000 pages of slides were made public. And this very transparent approach is another sign that the university is very committed to creating a more welcoming and accountable climate. This slide shows the survey response rates and total number of respondents for students, staff, and faculty. While some of the results are not generalizable to the rest of the population based on the low response rates, they do provide important insights about the impressions of our faculty, students, and staff. Next slide. Some of the findings are very positive, as you can see here. For example, more than 2/3 of all respondents were comfortable with the overall campus climate. And 84% of the students and faculty were comfortable with the classroom climate, which according to Rankin and Associates is very high. But the results also indicate that we have some work to do. Next page. For example, 18% of the respondents have experienced exclusionary conduct within the last year. And while this result appears high, it is within the range that Rankin and Associates found at other universities. We also see that 59% of faculty and 53% of staff respondents thought seriously about leaving a UM campus. These results are higher than what was found at other universities. But it's also important for all of us to put the results into context. When this survey was conducted in November of 2016, the fallout from the protests of 2015 and the potential for a significant budget cut from the state were central points to consider. Next slide, please. This slide shows the top reasons that faculty, students, and staff have indicated for reasons for wanting to leave the university. And for faculty, it's low salary and lack of institutional support, such as access to a research laboratory that is sufficient for the research, or access to other shared equipment that is needed for some of the big science or some of the projects that are needed in the social sciences as well. For staff, it's low salary and limited opportunities for improvement. And for students, it's a lack of sense of belonging and that the climate is not as welcoming as it should be. Next slide. This slide is from the AAUP and was from a survey that was done in 2015. And it shows the faculty salary comparisons for all 4 UM campuses with the respective peer institutions. If you can focus on the column that shows assistant professors, with the exception of S&T, the assistant professors at the 3 campuses are in the bottom quintile of the peers. I also compared staff salaries, which are not shown here. As an example, for finance staff at Mizzou, the median salary is ranked 97th out of 115, and for administrative staff, the ranking is at 109 out of 115. This needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed soon. I can't think of a more urgent imperative for all of us. So going forward, we would need to continue to cut expenses and find areas to grow revenue to provide sustained merit increases for faculty and staff. We'll also need to develop better professional toolkits for both faculty and staff so that they are more valued by all of us who depend on them for the critical work that we do in student success, research, and engagement. And I plan to share the progress in the upcoming board meetings, and I know that all of the chancellors and the provosts are committed to meeting with their constituent groups to find ways to create a more inclusive and welcoming environment. So that concludes my report, but before I turn over the program to Chancellor Cartwright to share some of the branding and marketing initiatives at Mizzou to increase enrollment and sentiment, are there any questions for me?
I have one. Dr. Choi, I hope things are going well in overseas. This is Dave Steelman. I understand that,
Yes.
that we need to be sensitive to saying faculty and staff, and that we value our staff as well as our faculty. I think it's important, though, that we make the point, not just within the university family, but to the state and all other constituencies, the highly competitive nature of faculty hiring, and particularly faculty hiring in the research areas that we would like to expand into. This is not a question, but a thought that I hope as we move forward on this, trying to explain this importance, that we make available the poaching, as I call it, that continually goes on, the recruitment that goes on, and that it really is a significant issue for the University of Missouri on all 4 campuses if we're going to not lose our best faculty and if we're going to get other great faculty from other institutions.
You're absolutely right. Our faculty members are nationally competitive, and if the 4 chancellors are there, if they are in agreement, they can nod their heads about how important it is to be proactive to prevent poaching of our faculty members. And it's happened in the past, so we need to be very vigilant about that. Thank you. You're right about that, Curator Steelman.
This is John Phillips, and I'm interested in the balance between the hiring of tenured track and non-tenured track. It looks like on most of our campuses we're doing about 50-50. Is that normal for our peer comparisons, and does that detract by hiring more non-tenured track, obviously less expensive? Does that detract from our ability to be competitive with tenure track professors when we go to the comparisons for the Carnegie research? How do we balance that?
That's right. If the ratio that is that I would consider to be a comparator ratio would be at about 80% of the faculty being in the tenured track, with 20% in the non-tenured track. And many of our non-tenured track faculty members are primarily teaching faculty, although there are some who are research faculty and also clinical faculty as well. But in terms of growing our research, which we need to do at all 4 campuses, our ability to hire tenured and tenured track faculty members is very critical. But as you can imagine, hiring a teaching professor of physics compared to hiring of a tenured or tenured track faculty member in physics is the difference between anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million because of the need to provide startups for research equipment, graduate student support, and postdoctoral support. And so it is a very expensive enterprise, but we are all public research universities ranked at the high and very high levels. And that means that we need to find resources to continue those investments. So the trend that I'm seeing is not going to be helpful for us overall as we try to grow our research programs.
I have one other question, and you can't see my face, but the first slide that you showed indicated that there were 296 administrators, and you got 100% participation in the survey. Maybe it was the second slide.
Yeah.
So did you use threats?
I found that to be very interesting.
Did you use threats, or was that just an anomaly?
Well, I was announced on November 2nd, so maybe that had a role in it. But our administrators, as you know, work very hard for the university, and the comments that they make are also going to be very important to help improve the climate throughout the system.
Thank you.
Dr. Choi, this
Thank you.
is Daryl Chapman. A question about the survey data. It's coming up on about a year old, and I was wondering if there was any plan.
Right.
I was wondering if there was any plan to get more recent data so that we can get a snapshot of actually what's going on now. Do you have any plans to do that? And because I think that there's probably some limited application, or, I mean, I think this data gives us a lot of information, a lot of useful information, but it'd be nice to have something that's updated. Do you have any plans on updating the information that we've got?
Yeah, not immediately. Not immediately. Typically, survey results surveys are conducted for climate between anywhere from 3 to 5 years, so that they can do some longitudinal studies. This particular survey was very extensive. As I mentioned, 2,500 pages of the report. But instead of using Rankin and Associates from time to time, we may intermix in there the opportunity to use the Coach survey, which is another vehicle that many campuses use. And that's something that I'm going to be discussing with the curators as well as the chancellors in the coming months.
And if we do something in the future, we would expect a quicker turnaround. It seemed like a little bit long to get the results back on this survey, but it, like you said, it was pretty in depth. But it'd be nice to get a quicker turnaround next time as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And what was really helpful was to get the analysis and the narratives from Rankin and Associates in addition to the raw data and the percentages, so that we can understand why particular groups had the impression that they had. And so getting that information was helpful, but also getting more timely results will be helpful to make to see the effectiveness of some of the programs that we implement.
Thank you.
I think,
Thank you.
President Choi, I think this was commissioned under the interim president, Middleton, and that it was shopped around, and that the commission was to do a thorough analysis, and frankly, I think it costs over $1 million. It was probably the most, I think that's the one that we commissioned a year and a half ago, I think. So to do that every year
Yes.
would be unfeasible.
Well, I would mean something probably in a
Yes.
more simple format,
Yeah.
and just give us some basic metrics to follow, but, nothing probably that extensive.
Yes, and I believe this survey was commissioned in March of 2016, and the survey was conducted in November of 2016, with the results being available sometime during the summer of 2017. But we did not want to have a rollout of the results during the summer when many of our faculty and students may not be on the campuses for research and other reasons.
Dr.
The
McDonald,
cost
I
of
think,
this
can
survey,
address part
I
of this.
believe, was $254,000. So it was quite expensive, but and so that's also another concern.
That's right. I just wanted to just offer Curator Chapman, I think one of the things that added to the length of time that it took was that this was done at the system level. And so oftentimes with these surveys, they're administered with a level of latitude given the campuses that they would do their own, and some had already used them in the past. But because it was coordinated from a system level, including the system office, the analysis took a little bit longer than it would with regard to the campuses. And President Choi, I think acknowledged the cost. I think the $1 million was connected to the IBIS audit, which was the other audit that was asked for with regard to diversity and inclusion on the campus.
Any other questions, comments? Dr. Cartwright?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, President Choi. I just wanted to lead off this section by giving a little bit of my observations after 2 months on the job, is that if you look at Mizzou, we have incredible staff who work very hard, many times actually doing well above what we would expect from them, and we really appreciate that. They are a front line to the public, to prospective students, to current students, and of course, to parents. We have outstanding faculty who are entrepreneurial, who are dedicated, who are doing cutting-edge research that are worldwide, recognized worldwide, and are also great teachers and understand how to bring the research into their classroom. Our students are remarkable, very active, really thinking about everything that they should be doing to become future leaders. And you see that in the results from our alumni, Our alumni are second to none. They're second to none in the support of the institution, and I have to admit that I look at all of the accomplishments of our incredible alumni, and it makes me realize how terrific this institution really is. So that puts us in a position where we can be that which we are, the AAU land-grant institution that everybody recognizes and is proud of in Missouri. And to do that, we need to really think about how we are doing everything that we do. You'll hear in a little bit about some of the things that are happening in Extension and what we're doing there and how we're using that also to get to reach much more of the state and talk about what Mizzou is about. We will also be strengthening and are strengthening our student recruiting efforts across the board. We're visiting every high school. We're looking at personnel. We're connecting them in the right places across the country where we have opportunity to reach additional audiences and bring in additional students. And we're, of course, promoting a culture that we believe is inclusive and reflects the values of Missouri. If we can do all of those things, we will be able to embrace the fact that we are a land grant and we are going to be recognized as the institution of the future, what higher education should be. Mizzou will become that. It will become a superb institution that is known for being innovative, practical, socially aware, and connected to society, poised to address the grand challenges of Missouri and the grand challenges of the world. Along with that, however, we need to be able to get all that messaging out. We need to make sure that people understand what Mizzou is and why you should come there. If you visit Mizzou, you will realize the type of institution it is. But in the world, in the reality of the world, not everybody can visit, so we need to be thinking about ways to have them visit virtually. And that is why we've engaged 160/90 to think about how do we position the institution and have everybody understand what this institution is about. So we wanted you to have some information from them, where we're headed, what we're trying to do, but recognize that this is simply in something that all institutions do, and we want to make sure that the word is out there that Mizzou is a terrific place to come to, and that we want everybody to realize, come there, they will be incredibly successful. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Suzette for the introduction of 160/90.
Good morning. I'm privileged this morning to present our presenters, both principals at the 160/90 agency. Matt Yeskovich works out of the Columbus office and leads the creative team in telling distinct and compelling stories. Kim Hallman is based in Philadelphia, and her teams figure out how to share those stories using traditional media, social media, and other platforms. Matt, Kim, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Suzette, and thank you all for your time this morning. Matt and I are incredibly excited to be here to better acquaint you with 160/90 and the work that can unfold as we partner together. As Suzette said, we are both part of the leadership team at 160/90, which I hope signals to you, let me click ahead to our names here, which I hope signals to you the vested interest that the agency has in this partnership, and also the level of strategic and creative thinking that we're committed to bringing to this engagement. So Matt is really the creative muscle on the project, and as Suzette said, I'm largely focused on ways to bring the brand to life for different audience segments as it's going out into market. But I would say at our core, we really identify as storytellers. Right? For us, it's all about crafting breakthrough narratives for clients in ways that are both authentic and aspirational. And we truly believe that the best communications results in a human reaction. So if you're telling an interesting story in an engaging way, people will react positively. In fact, our company name, which many of you may have clued into, is a reference to elevated blood pressure, is really meant to reflect our deep-rooted desire to evoke a visceral response with our work. We have 4 offices across the country: Philadelphia, Newport Beach, California, Gainesville, Florida, and Columbus, Ohio. As Suzette said, Matt heads up our Columbus office, and I'm based in Philadelphia. But I think even beyond our geographic reach, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is our ability to be full service and to be fluent and flexible enough to help solve for any communication challenge. So as you can see, we are managing all parts of the pipeline to ensure that we're not losing sight of that strategic vision at hand. So the slide here represents all different in-house capabilities and areas of expertise, everything from research and analytics to media planning and buying to all forms of promotion, video production, and then other modes of storytelling as well. In 15 plus years in the business, we've created a pretty diversified portfolio. Actually, about 50% of our work sits in the consumer space, and the other 50% lives within higher education. And I think one of the things that differentiates us as an agency has really been our ability to cross-pollinate learnings across industries. So we're taking the work that we do in the consumer space and applying it respectfully to the world of higher education. So this is a sampling of some of our clients here. As you can see, we're working with colleges and universities of all different stripes and sizes, from renowned liberal arts colleges to elite private institutions to, of course, large public research powerhouses in the AAU and otherwise. And then we're also working across all facets of academia. So admissions, faculty recruiting and retention, athletics, peer and national reputation, and then alumni engagement and fundraising efforts as well. We really look at each project as its own challenge and work to build a bespoke solution every time. But today we thought it might be helpful to walk you through some relevant examples of our work in the higher education arena to give some insights into how we might partner together as the relationship unfolds. So starting things out with Texas A&M, as I imagine you can appreciate, some changes and transition can create inherent complexities, but also great new opportunities. And over the course of the past 2 years, we've been navigating a lot of those opportunities with Texas A&M. They welcomed a new university president, Michael Young, in May of 2015, followed by a new foundation president, Tyson Vocal, in January 2016, and that same month, a new athletic director, Scott Woodward. So as you can imagine, the stakes were high, but we found that perception was actually surprisingly low. Only about 3% of the general population equated Texas A&M with a leading public university. The school is very sizable, of course, but it's much more commonly associated with things like football or agriculture or even its military tradition. So we realized that we had a tremendous opportunity to work to raise national reputation of Texas A&M and to start to shift that narrative to one of academic and research excellence. But we also acknowledged off the bat that there was really no silver bullet to do that, right? We needed to come up with an omni-channel strategy that would work across different communications channels to be able to successfully reach and resonate with different audience segments. And for Texas A&M, the brand stance that allowed us to do that holistically is centered on this idea of the fearless front. For 140 years, Texas A&M has fearlessly been changing lives and charting impact. And we knew that was a message that would ring true across their 16 colleges. It was a message that would serve us well in admissions conversations and also help us in the midst of one of the most ambitious fundraising campaigns in the history of public higher education at $4 billion that they were walking into. Pieces like this that ran in print, side by side in front, nod to the strength and solidarity of the Aggie Network, and I think also speak nicely to the collective commitment of Aggies to lead the charge in solving for some of the grand global challenges of our time. And then we're also leaning very heavily into digital touchpoints and experiential activations to be able to seed stories of societal impact for the institution at large. So one of the really cool ways I think we helped bring the brand to life this past fall was through a DC Metro station activation. That's what you see looping there behind me. This got us in front of Aggies on the Hill. It was a nice surprise and delight moment for commuters who were coming in and out of the Capitol, and it also garnered us an audience of research funders like the NSF. In fact, it's proven so successful that we're now looking at ways to replicate that kind of activation in key out-of-state admissions markets for the next calendar year. But across the board here, our common call to action is for people to learn more of the A&M story by visiting us on a custom microsite that we developed that's in that upper left-hand corner, fearlessfront.com. At the same time, we knew that it would be incredibly important to work to humanize that institutional narrative. And so we carved out a powerful individual share of voice for their president, Michael Young. And in this case, we leaned very heavily on content marketing and media relations as a way to make him feel both authentic and accessible to the community. So a number of goals here. First and foremost, conveying stable leadership to the community, but also really working to position him as a champion for Aggies within the state of Texas, but also a thought leader in the national higher education landscape. And then we did also want to take an opportunity to show you a video that we created, which really serves as the centerpiece of their reputation campaign. I will caveat this by saying that this is a long form piece. It's pretty epic at about 2.5 minutes. But we also have various cut downs that we've created that have served us in admissions conversations with donors as well, and then for other smaller form outlets like social media. But for purposes of today, we'll play down this anthem piece so you can get a sense stylistically of where we went with A&M.
There's a fight inside all of us. Timeless, undying, uncompromising, in a search for substance and reason. We see a greater purpose. We have a duty to uphold our values and a calling to set the example for all. Our strength is born from the principles truth and love. So crave the truth. Look for the truth in all that you do. Be the voice of reason and the promise of wisdom. Be curious, be eager to chase the unknown. But never lose sight of what is true. And listen to the love in your heart. It's the one language we all share. Love your neighbors, love your friends, love your family, love your country and your freedom and all those who keep it safe. Let love fuel your purpose, and you won't be led wrong. Never forget the weight of these virtues. There's incredible power in truth and love. It holds tight the enduring bond between us. And with that, nothing stands in our way. As Aggies, we're always ready to fight for each other and for all we believe in. We stand side by side and take on impossible. We speak with one voice, not just to be heard, to be felt. We're all Aggies, and we are fearless on every front.
So how do we keep all of those different communications touch points rolling and market and sustain momentum? What you see here is a look at that omni-channel plan that I was talking about earlier. It's probably a little bit of an eye chart for you, but there are traditional elements, of course, like advertising that provide us that air cover, but then we are very intentional about bringing in those activation moments and those thought leadership plays to round out the story. And you can see we've carved out those touch points with different audiences over time. And then, of course, we have tracking mechanisms that are working for us on the back end. This is a look here. You can see it rotating. This allows us to stay really plugged into consumer pathways, but importantly also, I think, to be able to sort of A/B test content as it's going out into market and optimize it to ensure the best performance over time. And then we'll give you a look at some results here. Nice numbers. I will point to sort of the bookended stats there on the visibility front. In our first year of working together, 413 million media impressions. And then that video piece that we play down, as I mentioned, is part of a larger content series in terms of the pieces that went out online, digitally or social. We've seen 20 million plus views, and that number continues to grow as we serialize content there.
Did you measure enrollment applications, or where enrollment went or applications went after your campaign?
Yeah, we're looking at enrollment numbers as well. So the campaign there originated on the national reputation front, but then we've also started planning admissions efforts that are rolling out into market now and into next year. So we'll have stronger numbers against that space there, but they're particularly interested in not the number of students necessarily, but certainly raising the quality of students and looking at certain demographic pockets from out-of-state markets as well. So those will be the most important KPIs that we'll look to in the future.
I have a question. We have 4 different campuses with 4 different personalities and strengths and weaknesses. What will be your approach in terms of trying to capture one message, or are you going to try to segment it by campus?
Yeah, so Matt might be able to speak to this too, or, oh,
Can I just,
or the Chancellor.
This particular work that they're doing is just for Mizzou.
Mizzou only, all right.
Missouri, Columbia.
Thank you.
I have a question. Thank you guys for this. I was just, because I'm so anxious to get going on this. I really am. And I feel like we engaged you all a few months ago, to my recollection. Where are you in producing any sort of material? Can you give us a sneak peek on what you see for Mizzou and what you got going on over there?
They still have a couple more things they were going to show, and also they came on campus 2 weeks ago is when the actual effort started. It's 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah, so we'll
want to show the Wisconsin.
Yeah, we'll zip through a couple of other examples, and then we'll open it up fully to Q&A as well. But great to hear this engagement and your questions, and we're looking forward to addressing more. I also just wanted to really quickly talk you through University of Virginia, and then Matt will talk you through Wisconsin. Of course, this is an iconic institution, a name in higher education. They have a long history. They're actually getting ready to celebrate their bicentennial on grounds next week. And of course, they've been consistently ranked as the #2 or #3 public. But the bicentennial actually brings up a really interesting dynamic for them. If you were to dial it back to the beginning of our engagement about 3 years ago and sit down with members of the UVA community and ask them about their strengths or their differentiators, they were very quick to look backward and to point to their history or to Jefferson himself as their founder as a way to define themselves. So walking in, there were a number of relevancy issues that we were facing. At the same time, those relevancy issues have been compounded over the years by a series of very unfortunate current events, as you can imagine, even a few weeks ago in terms of what was happening in Charlottesville. And then there were also some misaligned perceptions that we found in the course of the outset of our research. About 68% of external constituencies were associating UVA with things like elitism just as much as a top quality education, which sort of flies in the face of their public mission. So really our insight there, our counsel to them, and our charge was to take control of their story. And I think really importantly to do it in a way that would certainly channel or honor their past, but really successfully face UVA forward and power them forward. And so strategically, we wrapped our arms around this idea for them of living idealism, which is meant rather than making UVA synonymous with Jefferson, the man himself, to instead really reflect Jeffersonian ideals, but to talk about how timeless those values actually are. So, for example, when we're talking about iconic buildings on campus and some longstanding educational philosophies that are rolled up into things like the Rotunda and the academical villages, you can see that we're talking about them not as a monument, but as a bulldozer, right? So UVA is not a museum. The UVA educational experience is not a bunch of history lessons that are strung together. It really is a way that our students are living out each day. When we talk about recruitment communications, there are a number of dualities here. So we're talking about prospective students, but then also communicating messages to their parents, of course. And then we also want to be able to straddle this idea of values that define us, but value that we're recognized for as well. So again, playing into those Jeffersonian ideals and playing up the honor code, but then also very clearly communicating the ROI from a UVA education. And then on the leadership communications front, we're developing pieces like this, Illimitable, which is the president's report. You can see, again, that we're borrowing some verbiage from Jefferson, but we're packaging it in a vehicle that's intentionally designed to share news and updates, not just with donors, but with the campus community at large, with a degree of transparency as we're talking about groundbreaking research or new scholarship and programming. And then finally, I would just point to digital experiences that we're creating there as well. Obviously attracts a large cross-section of audiences and can be a really powerful experience for positive storytelling, given that we own that platform and can control those messages. Here we're looking at creating content that is not only memorable, but really shareable. And this, of course, allows users to sort of go through the content on their own time and in their own terms, but we're able to track their every interaction on the background and optimize here as well. So a couple of quick numbers we'll share here in terms of applications and admissions efforts. Specifically, you can see the number of applications has grown over the course of the past 2 years, up 23%. Also, quality of applicants, you can see their highest in school history for the average SAT score. But the other thing that I would point to are some of the perceptual results, which in some cases may seem like intangibles, but we had a very intentional effort to track them. At the outset of our engagement, they launched a perception study, and that was just refielded after our work has been in market for 2 years, so a 3-year gap there. And you can see numbers in terms of a 7% growth in perception around research, 6% up in terms of top quality education, and then we're also doing a lot of work for UVA Health, and you can see perceived overall quality of care has grown there on the perception front as well. So before you're tired of hearing from me, I will turn it over to Matt to share another case study.
Thank you. And really quickly wanted to walk you through this, talk about Missouri a little generally, and then answer all questions that you have. So we wanted to share some work with Wisconsin. I think there are a lot of parallels to Mizzou and the opportunities that exist there. One thing that was kind of top of mind in our work with Wisconsin is it's a state where the value of public education is top of mind. It's a constant conversation. But when polled, it was interesting to find that a vast majority, 82% of people within the state of Wisconsin believed in what's called the Wisconsin idea. And simply stated, this is that the University of Wisconsin exists for and by the people of Wisconsin. It's there to serve the state and then, in an ancillary fashion, benefit the world. So at its core, people believed in this idea, but then when they started to talk about it more publicly, things got muddied. So this gave us a really clear direction to go as far as how we were to establish and enhance their reputation, really hitting hard on the value and the impact that the University of Wisconsin has to the state and its constituents. So how do you do that to all the myriad audiences that you need to talk to as a university? I think and I hope that you're getting a sense throughout all of this work that we try to uncover a fundamental truth about the university that can kind of serve in a variety of ways as a core platform to move forward. Obviously, how you talk to 17-year-olds and their parents is vastly different from how you would talk to major donors or alums or thought leaders. But when everything is kind of centered, in this case, centered on the edge is the fundamental idea here, but when everything's grounded in that fundamental truth, every effort that you make works in coordination and serves to sort of lift your general story. So for Wisconsin, the idea that we kept coming back to was that this is a place that, as you can see, is centered on the edge. Well, what does that mean? It's a place that's incredibly grounded. It's Midwestern. It's hardworking. It's humble. But that doesn't exist in conflict of the fact that what they're doing is groundbreaking in so many ways. Their alums are changing the world across the world. They're doing research that's pioneering all sorts of new discoveries. And it's that duality of being grounded and centered with being on the edge of what's possible that kind of fueled all the storytelling we did for Wisconsin. This is an example of that. It reads, many viewpoints, shared focus. The idea that through collaboration and some of that friction from opposing viewpoints, you can actually arrive at a better conclusion. Madison is a place that gets cold, and you can't run from that. You can't paint a rosy picture and only show pictures to prospective students of 80 degrees and sun-dappled trees and the perfectly diverse group of students, so you embrace it. This reads, when we're snowed in, we don't get restless, we get creative. We don't get cabin fever, we get cabin ingenuity. Students and their parents can spot an inauthentic story a mile away. So rather than kind of run for it or try to paint a picture that's not true of the experience, do it in a way that evokes the personality that actually exists there and embraces your reality. Thankfully, Columbia doesn't get quite as cold as Madison, I think. Another example of that, Bascom Hall and Bascom Hill is such a traditional and iconic part of the University of Wisconsin. We want to represent that, but not in a quiet, staid way. So using some graphics and being more casual with things to tell a story that appeals to 17-year-olds can also kind of give a nod to that tradition and appeal to their parents at the same time. This is a spread from their view book. How do you pivot that idea of being centered on the edge and use it to speak to alums, donors? This is their capital campaign. It's entitled Always Forward. And really embracing the idea that no matter what the endeavor, with your support, the University of Wisconsin is able to push forward and make progress in many areas. Wisconsin as a state is a very diverse place. Lots of mindsets that change as you move from Madison to rural Wisconsin to Milwaukee. And as such, there were lots of different opinions on the value of Wisconsin and what happened in Madison. So this is a project that we launched. It's called Project 72. In each of the 72 counties across the state of Wisconsin, we worked in close collaboration with the university to uncover stories of impact, stories of promise, stories where a research effort had made a difference, stories where an individual alum had made a huge difference in a community. Built a website that highlighted each of those stories and really paid homage to what people are able to do within each of those counties, but then we supported it with a little air cover. These billboards showed up in each of those 72 counties, and they were laser focused on what the public mindset was within that county. So if they were worried about the return on investment of public education, we talked about that. Such a good investment, it's ironic we're red. Or the only thing better than a bull market is a badger market. People wondering what happens with all this research enterprise. Let's address that directly. What do our tech startups make anyway? Jobs. Just a really simple effort to really honestly convey the value of Wisconsin to the entire state in the way that was appropriate for them. Obviously a dairy farmer in rural Wisconsin thinks very differently or has different priorities than a business person in the center of Milwaukee. Brand to us is so much more than a lot of the collateral you've seen, the digital components, the social, video, media. We think about events as well and how this story unfolds when people are coming together. This was in service of the campaign launch, but even for reputational efforts, making sure this story, this brand is carried through to events with alums and speaking to them in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, and in Madison as well, is really top of mind for us. For a reputation effort, this is a video that we developed to kind of tell that story cohesively, and I would say the same note Kim gave during A&M. Video is such a valuable medium to us, and it's an investment as well that we want to make sure is used in a myriad of ways. So while this is a more anthemic piece, this was used for hundreds of different purposes, from quick social promotions to PSAs during the Big Ten Network games to digital ads and more.
When you have someone's back, you're not always gonna see eye to eye. Think about it. Light defines itself at
the edges of darkness. Warmth
cannot exist
without cold.
It's only thanks to day
that we can appreciate the night. Contrasts are the foundation of understanding.
Truth is born out of a perspective. Mine,
yours, his, hers, theirs,
and theirs. Because it's only by defining where I end
and you begin
that we can discover the us
that exists between.
That's where greatness lies. We aren't afraid of a little friction. Friction is the spark
that ignites a roaring fire.
From inspired jokers to serious politicians,
Astronauts to space cowboys.
we are a contradiction-loving,
Possibility-celebrating
limit-defying bunch of
forward thinkers that aren't afraid to flock with the flamingos.
It's not about tearing down ideas.
It's about coming up with great ones that will serve.
Every last one of us.
How else would we be able to take a humble Midwestern school
And turn it into a powerhouse of potential. It's the same spirit that pushes us to look out on a frozen field,
and see a playground,
battleground, common ground.
We may not agree on everything, but we definitely agree that the only way
is forward. On Wisconsin.
So we wanted to share that not just to show our work with Wisconsin, but I think it's a nice contrast when you look at that against the A&M video. And if you know anything about either of those two institutions, you know that's a story that only those institutions could tell. In some ways, higher education is a parity product, right? But each school that is worth something has a different personality, has different points of strength, and it's our goal in all of this to kind of uncover that story that only Mizzou can tell. So some results for Wisconsin, and we show you these to show, first of all, that things are trending upward for them, but also because we're kind of maniacal about measurement. This is not some soft thing that we're just telling a fun story or showing a design we think looks good. We want it to be effective for the institution. So to see that applications went up by 15% is something that we take a lot of heart in. Obviously, we're trying to drive traffic to the web. Seeing an increase in the U.S. News and World Report rankings is something that we look to as well. And then beyond that, focused on the fundraising end of things, to have met within 1 year over 50% of the goal is something that we were very proud of. So with that, now we want to turn our efforts to Mizzou. And as Chancellor Cartwright mentioned, we were on campus 2 weeks ago talking with hundreds of people. We've had the chance to talk with some of you in this room as well, and are very excited about the road ahead. There's a great story to tell with Mizzou, and we're excited to be part of it. We're honored to be part of it. It's important work. I think a lot of the things that Chancellor Cartwright mentioned, you have such a great story to tell. Being that land-grant institution, the AAU, your research prowess, but even the culture on campus, the beauty of campus. There are a myriad of different things that only you can say, and we're excited to share that with the world. There's a variety of ways in which we're intending to do that, and we're intending to do that quick. There's a real sense of urgency, both within our agency and with Dr. Cartwright, Suzette, and the whole team as well. So with that, we would love to hear any questions that you might have.
And I had to step out for a second, so I hope I didn't miss it. When can we expect to start seeing some product? When does this ball get rolling?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. There are a number of efforts underway. The last thing we want to do is to hold back, until everything is perfect months from now, and then launch it upon the world. So we're taking.
And let me make clear.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm not trying to rush or alter your frame line. I'm just saying, for my purposes,
Yes.
so that I know, and we get questions on the board.
Absolutely.
Too, because the entire state is kind of concerned about what has happened to the image of Mizzou. So I'm just asking a timeline.
Yeah, we are intending to increase efforts to affect applications this fall. We are intended to be in market to increase our yield in the spring in ways that we haven't done before. And that gives us some air cover to develop the brand more cohesively in a way that can serve long-term purposes.
What I'd add on that is we are already starting to do some things. We're making sure that anything that's going out is in concert with what 160/90 is doing, so that when they are final with their brand as such, or where we're headed, which is going to be sometime in November, if I remember the time scale, where you're thinking about really having a product to us that we can look at. But before then, we have a lot of things that we're doing and making sure that we're not going to do anything that in any way affects what they're trying to do ultimately.
Yeah,
We're doing things together.
This is a follow-up to that question, but Matt, I assume, and it seems obvious to me, that this is more of a process than it is all of a sudden on a Monday morning we get what we're going to be using. It'll be back and forth and opportunity for us to comment and express our thoughts, primarily the campus people, but it is a process that would take some length of time, I'm assuming.
It is, and there are several tracks running to ensure that that process can be respected while not holding back the things that we very urgently need to do to affect enrollment at Mizzou. So there are lots of things that Suzette and her team have underway that will be launching well in advance of this brand effort that will support it. But with universities, you don't get the luxury of starting from scratch or hitting the reset button. These are institutions that have existed for a long time and have brands that are well established. So we're trying to uncover the best ways to tell that story over time.
And we're dealing with unique issues that
Correct.
neither University of Virginia or Wisconsin or A&M are dealing with, and those unique issues need to be addressed. But I think you can tell from the questions that have been asked that this is a double high priority for us and very important.
Well, I would love to reinforce to you that it is this agency's top priority as well.
I've got a question. I know we're focused on Mizzou here, but what is the branding message? Is it Mizzou or is it University of Missouri? Is it both? I'd like some input on that. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Are you referring to the nomenclature of it, or the University of Mizzou system versus Mizzou?
I know this is, 50% of our students go to University of Missouri, Columbia. The other 50% go to the other three, and I know what you're looking at is Mizzou, but I'm just wondering what that branding, is it just going to be that nomenclature, or is it going to be University of Missouri, or is it going to be both, or?
I imagine that we'll need to carve out rules and needs for both. I think we're most urgently focused on how we, colloquially refer to Mizzou in terms of enrollment, because that's the urgent need to change the metrics on. But obviously, we need to consider the role of the university's brand in the space, and these other institutions as well, and how they relate to one another.
I want to follow up that. That was a great question, and one that Curator Farmer and I have been discussing too. Mizzou, of course, is a very colloquial sounding thing. I noticed in Texas A&M, you said Texas A&M, or University of Texas A&M, University of Virginia, University of Wisconsin. I hope, and I would hope that you will let us know, and Alex, I'd direct this to you, in determining how to word this. We are not focused on the word Mizzou because of some anachronistic word system that seems to be, in my opinion, impinging upon our branding. And that if your ads prefer to use University of Missouri, that you would communicate that with us, because I believe this board and Dr. Choi do have the authority to allow you to use the words that you think use best. I love Mizzou. I went to Mizzou. But when you're trying to attract students from all over the country and you're trying to attract excellent students, I'm not sure the word Mizzou means the same thing as the University of Missouri. So I hope that's something we keep our eyes on. And as you can probably tell, if I haven't said it at least 27 times in this meeting, I find the use of the word system anachronistic, and I just don't like it.
I would strongly second everything Curator Steelman said there.
But I think for our part, we're, there's what exists in charters, but there's also how people think about you and how we want people to think about you. So if the market tells us that nomenclature like the University of Missouri is the way that people connect to us, and then once they have an affinity for us, let's all say Mizzou, that might be the right way to move forward. But we want to base that based on, what will affect the numbers the most.
And that's all I was saying.
Yeah.
Don't be tied into an old way of doing things that may not be solving our problems.
Understood.
And I guess I would like to add, just thinking about this from a marketing standpoint, we underwent a major logo change with our tiger a few years ago, and I think not only do we need to re-energize the youth who are going to Mizzou or MU, but it's also re-engaging alums and older people, I hate to say that, who think about this as, my father calls it the University of Missouri, and there's Truman the Tiger, and there's these old emblematic symbols that really resonate with all generations in this state. So we're moving forward, but I also think we got to think about who we are and our roots as well, because there is a deep pride in that.
Absolutely.
And that kind of goes to my question. When you talk about branding, defining who we are or who the University of Missouri is, who will you be talking to? Can you describe that process? Is it survey data? Is it focus groups? Is it talking to people on campus? Is it going out into outstate Missouri? How are you going to do that?
It's all of the above. In an effort to be as nimble as possible, we're trying to take as much advantage of data that exists already, studies that have been done, in addition to our own work. We just wrapped up a incredibly healthy session on campus where we spoke with in excess, I think, of 200 people all across the institution, with an effort to both understand what they understand the University of Missouri to be, but also to understand the constituencies that affect them. So from an enrollment perspective, talk to us about your prospective student pool and what their mindset is and what we need to affect. So just about everything you mentioned is going into this in one way, shape, or form.
And I'd like to add that this is a threshold and I think a critical issue, because even in our own literature, we sometimes confuse the University of Missouri with the University of Missouri system. What does MU mean, actually? We can give you examples where even in things that we receive as curators, there's confusion over whether it's system, and David doesn't like the word, and we probably don't want to market it as a word. We are now operating more as a system, but there are individual identities, which is why I raised that question. So be careful and make sure that you're not using Mizzou, because it doesn't mean something out state. So I think that's a really threshold question, and glad that you're being careful and focusing on that.
Yeah, I just to respond to that very quickly, I don't, the slides that we have with the little 4 thumbnails don't do justice to the philosophy we have, I think. So with regard to nomenclature, with regard to audiences, and even within the enrollment groups, the way that someone outside the state thinks about this institution, or we want to, is vastly different than in-state. Even in-state, you have such a diversity of populations that our strategy is always nuanced. There's not one right answer for everyone. So we intend to build the most flexible platform we can while speaking with one voice at the same time.
There's even a difference between Missouri and Missouri, and I'm glad to hear
I
that
say
Betty
Missouri.
Farmer calls it Missouri, because half the population calls it Missouri.
I just wanted to say welcome. I think a lot of the questions that you're getting from the board are coming from a place of passion, because we all care about this institution and our state, and we've been frustrated that you haven't come sooner. So please don't take any of this directed at you. We're really glad you're here, and we can't wait to see what you can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions,
Thank you,
Kim?
Ms. Moon.
Moon?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I really enjoyed the presentation and the comments that were made by the curators. Normally, this process of branding with 160/90 takes anywhere from 9 months to a year. But we've asked them to accelerate that, to not only work on the branding, but marketing and advertising materials to increase application and the yield. There's nothing more important right now for Mizzou, and I know Chancellor Cartwright agrees with me, than to increase the applications and the yield so that we have a higher enrollment for the fall of 2018. And it's an all-hands-on-deck approach that Chancellor Cartwright announced very, very early in his tenure, and that's something that we're going to be updating the board on during every board meeting, and more frequently than that throughout the term.
Thank you, Dr. Choi, and Kim and Matt, thank you. Let me suggest something to you. We're just about to move to the next part of our agenda, and that is a critical issues discussion. It's going to be, I continue to put more and more pressure on Marshall Stewart, but it's going to be a critical issues discussion about this university moving forward and our opportunities. I think it'd be helpful if you all could stay around for the next 60 or 90 minutes and listen to this session, because you're going to hear some things and learn some things about where we're going and where we're headed and where we want to be, that I think would be helpful to you in understanding the university and Mizzou and the system curators do them. And,
I hate that word.
I don't, but I think it'd be helpful if you can do that.
That's wonderful, and we're hopeful to be able to share that content. Obviously, we have huge teams working on all of this and want to share that with them as well. So thank you all for your time.
Okay,
Very
thank you.
appreciative of it.
Let's tell you, since we're going to move right into critical issues, let's just take maybe a 7-minute break, to get set up here. Call the meeting back to order, and since the initial meeting in 2017, we have had on our curator's agenda on Friday morning addressing different critical issues that face the university, face the campuses, and this is a time when we'll have a presentation, but it's also a time that we encourage questions, comments, sharing, and thoughts by curators, but also by the chancellors, general offices, and officers who are here about the subject we're going to talk about. So at this time, I will introduce Marshall Stewart, who is going to lead us, along with some other folks he has brought with him today, to talk about a specific critical issue of importance to the university.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you have built this thing up so high, I'm not sure I can ever hit the mark.
We have media here from all over the state.
That's what I hear. So thank you for continuing to build it up. You're making my day. I do want to thank you and the curators for your interest. Just to recap, a few folks that are new to the curators. I started here 13 months ago. I came from North Carolina State University, where I'd spent 22 years of my life, but more importantly probably for me, that was home. I'd grown up there, gone to school there. I thought I was NC State Wolfpack for life, and they did too, until the University of Missouri came after me. And the world began to change, and that's actually fact, and I really believe that timing and opportunity, not only for me personally, but professionally, for Jan and I to move to Missouri, it couldn't have been a better fit. I was just telling Daryl that it's been the most invigorating, exciting time of my career, because every thread that I've ever used in my life, from working in public sector to working in nonprofits to education, higher education, et cetera, we use all those tools every single day. And this is a great university. And I want to say a word about the 160/90. I had the privilege of being on that committee that helped find that group. When I saw the work they had done prior to interviewing them, I had seen the work they'd done at the University of Wisconsin. I did not know that was 160/90. I will tell you, my first thought was, we need them at the University of Missouri, and then sure enough, they walk in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So I'm excited about that work, because their work does tie into this, as you said a few minutes ago, Marcy, and it's going to be good. They are giving you some handouts, so and they're enough for everybody in the audience to have. And so what we're going to do is, so you can kind of know where we are in this. I was told I had about 90 minutes, and I'm going to try to be mindful of your time. You're going to see a presentation from me on the front end that's going to give you an overview of a lot of things we've been working on that I think can be very applicable, not only to the University of Missouri and the Columbia campus, but also to the other schools in the system, to you as curators. And I think you'll find this very interesting, because we've done a lot of research and deep digging about Missouri this year. Then the next part will be some of our stakeholders here in the Kansas City area that work in particular with us in more of an urban environment. I thought that would be good for you to hear from them to understand that context. And then lastly, we're going to have you help us with a little bit of an engagement activity that some of you helped us with back in July. You'll remember we did a brainstorming session for those of you that were involved. And we're going to kind of go through a little process here so you can help us refine that, because that really gets back to this whole idea of the university system and how we can do broader engagement across the whole system, as we've been asked to speak to and to work with President Choi, thinking about the whole system as well. So we'll get started. Some things for you to think about in terms of the three big ideas that I'm going to share with you in terms of an overview. We're going to talk about all things Missouri and what that means. You will find that a lot of the language that I use is all things Missouri, because I believe truly that if you do the right things for the citizens of Missouri, you'll be nationally and globally known. But it's when institutions in public higher education perhaps forget that or lose that connectivity, with the citizens that they serve, their biggest stakeholder, their biggest funder, their biggest donor group and collective. When we lose that or we get away from that, that's when we get in trouble. And I think we have to be very thoughtful and careful about that. You will hear me talking about speaking to Missourians first and making sure we keep them first of mind and how we need to embrace that. That is why when Marcy talks about me being all over the state, I have been. I have been in places in Missouri that most Missourians don't know exist. I have been from Cuba to Warsaw to Portageville to Hayti to you name it. I've been to Atchison County. I've covered this state because I really wanted to learn about Missouri. And when I got here, they asked the question that all leaders get asked when you're interviewing for a job: what's your vision for the future of our program and extension, for instance, in my context? And my answer was this: that my vision doesn't matter. It's the vision of the people of Missouri that matters. So we have spent an enormous amount of time learning about Missouri, and it's putting us in a place where we probably have as much knowledge and information on Missouri. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk for a few minutes about reimagining MU extension and engagement. One of the things that was different when I came here, they had made this position vice chancellor, but they'd also added and engagement, which gave me a broader portfolio to think about the whole university. And I'm going to show you some stuff that hasn't been seen much publicly that we are getting ready to launch for the whole university's engagement profile. And that does tee off into some of the areas that we'll talk about in terms of the system. And then the university engagement opportunities, we'll speak to those and really give you some sense of how we're working and walking through those as a system. So, when I first got here, again, I spent a lot of time, did a listen and learn tour, as most leaders do, spent all these many hours in the pickup truck all over the state. Literally, for me, it's a Ford F-150, and I have been all over the state in that Ford F-150 along with others. And then, but then when we got into the fall of the year, into October, we began a program that we referred to at that time as Building Our Future Together, because we wanted to really do a deep dive on the data of Missouri. I wanted to understand Missouri at its core, not in a context of the MU extension idea or even the university, but what were Missourians thinking? What's on their mind every day? Because I do believe that if you take care of Missourians, Missourians will take care of you. I also believe if you don't take care of Missourians, Missourians will take care of you. You may not like it, but they're going to take care of you one or the other. So the point is that when you're in the public sector, you need to understand the constituencies you serve. So we did a quantitative deep dive into 6 sectors. I had a team focused on that starting in October. They spent about 7-8 months really going through the data of Missouri, and I'll show you a little bit of that in a few moments. Qualitatively, we did 42 community conversations all over the state, spoke to 1,200 Missourians. Demographically, they covered the demographics of Missouri, from urban to rural to those with high wealth, those low income, everything in between, we covered it. Because again, we wanted to get a snapshot of Missouri. We also did a third-party review. We did an economic impact study on MU extension specifically to see where we could be better and what our impact was, and you'll see those numbers in a few moments. And we also spent time with some thought leaders. I brought in a team of thought leaders from public higher education that work in the engagement space that may or may not have extension connectivity but understand engagement. And we brought them in to really spend some time with us to give us some sights and ideas about what we might be doing better. So we'll spend some time on these things that we now refer to as All Things Missouri. Quantitatively, we looked at 6 areas. The ones you see in red are the areas that come out really high. These are the areas that really begin to percolate up. Now think about it, if I speak with a Missourian in Missouri, depending on how you say it, they may not talk about the economy, but they'll talk about their job. They'll talk about, am I making more today than I did a year ago? Am I improving? So when I say economy, that's a broad theme, but it's really talking about jobs, job creation, entrepreneurship, those kind of themes. When I talk about education, it could be K-12. We have 524 school districts in the state of Missouri. We have lots of opportunities to go to higher education in community college as well as 4-year schools, public and private. Again, education is a big deal, though. When people sit at their kitchen table, they talk about education in some context oftentimes. So that was another issue that comes up high. Quantitatively, again, when you look at the numbers, health is a big issue. We have a lot of issues regarding health in this state, and some of them need more intentionality. I know you spent some time talking about health yesterday in your meeting. There's a great opportunity there. Now, what I want to do, if you look at the screen, you will see at the bottom there is a web portal, and Jeremy over here is going to help me. I'm going to let him navigate. We learned earlier when we practice this, it's better if he navigates and I just get to talk. So he's going to scroll down. If you click on that website and you were to go to this, I want you to see this because this is the data of Missouri. And when I say that, this is data we're giving to anybody in the state. We've got nonprofits, state agencies, and others who have actually contacted us and want our data set because it's not unique to us. What Missourians think is what Missourians think, so shouldn't we provide that to all people? Well, we have. So if you go there and go back one click, I want to show them where you click right there. Go back one click. Okay, if you go down, you'll see a data hub there. You see that, the fourth button down. If you were to click there now, click there. We have taken all those streams of data hub, there you go. We've taken all those streams of data. Now, if you'll scroll down and you'll see the 6 sectors we looked at. And let's just take education. Let's click on that one. If you were to go to education, now, key issues in education. This will begin to give you some of this data. We were talking at dinner last night with some of you about this. For instance, you can begin to look and dig deep into K-12 and higher education. Click on Read More there. And if you were to go down, this begins to give you a snapshot of what's going on in the state of Missouri as related to K-12 schooling and higher education. You can find series of maps, other things that are now all over the state of Missouri in terms of who's capturing the data. All those streams are now coming into the University of Missouri. So what we have is all these streams of data. If you were to look at education, economy, health, and all these 6 indicator areas, they're all coming here. Now I want you to be aware of this because this is a tool as a board that you now have. This is a tool that any Missourian now has. There's no excuse for us not to know what the data is anymore because we're now pulling that data in. It's being refreshed, constantly updated, and what you can do is actually go in to look at maps of where high school graduation rates are high or low. You'll be able to do that. That's about extending knowledge of the people from the university to the people of Missouri. Does that make sense? We're now extending that out and putting these tools in the hands of people. Now let's get back out of this and go back to our PowerPoint. I want you to see this example. Go all the way back. We can do the same thing if you were to click on this website, and again, you have access to do that from your own devices. But I want you to know that quantitatively, these 3 themes came up high. Now let's go to our next slide, and you'll see qualitative. This is the 42 community conversations I talked about. Guess what? 3 same issues come up as top line in that category as well. So what you see is an alignment between data, what the data says, and what people are feeling. That's really, really important because when you get that alignment, one thing you know about Missouri better than I do because you've been here is this is a state of many states. Getting people to agree on anything in Missouri is tough because of the way we were settled, our history, our heritage. If you're in northern Missouri, you're getting close to Iowa, and you begin to pick up that. If you're in southern Missouri, you might as well be in Arkansas. They sound a whole lot like I do down there, kind of thing, you know. So it's just different parts of the state. But what you find is you can be again in Hayti, or you can be in Bethany, and you find people are worried about the economy, they're concerned about education, health. It begins to clarify and give you some sense. Now, if you were to click on this web portal again, and we won't do that again, let's just, okay, go ahead. Click go up. We'll do it again. Go ahead. Go down to the community conversations right there. Click on that PDF. This gives you an executive summary of the whole state. So again, if you want to know what people are feeling, you as leaders can go to that now. Or if you're a county commissioner, or if you're a school board member, or if you're a school superintendent in a local school, or if you're a farmer, you know, in West Central Missouri, you can go to this data and find out what's going on in Missouri. So I hope this begins to show you what I found. What was interesting that is nobody was curating the data. Now we are. So we have taken this exercise to now pull this thread together, and I'll show you how we're going to use that going forward. But this begins to give you those sub-issues so you can begin to see those as well. Now let's go back to the PowerPoint. I want you to see this tool, though, because this is really a big part of our future. So quantitatively we know, qualitatively we know there's 3 issues. Now let's talk about third-party impact and our third-party review and outcomes. When we did the third party, we found that, for instance, in MU Extension, we had never had this number. We expend about $84 million a year. That's federal, state, county, and grants, contracts, and fees. You put it all together, $84 million. That's what we expend. The impact on the state of Missouri is $945 million. We had never had that number. Now, if you go back to the website one more time, take me back there one more time because you need to know this. And you can scroll down one more time. Go down to Techonomy Partners full report. This is the full report. So if you want to dig in and see how we do that in the parts of the state, you can actually see that. Now, one of our goals ultimately is to be able to tell this county by county. My next series in this, probably the next 2 years, will be to bring them back in, and they will go into each county and show us our economic impact per county. And when we can do that, we can then tell a great narrative, and that fits into 160/90. Does that make sense? It begins to be alignment, and we begin to really understand our constituents. So again, I wanted you to see the report. We'll go now back to the PowerPoint. Great. And now I can drive again. So, thought leader panel, they told us a lot of things too. They told us we need to re-envision our engagement across the campus and the system, that we had opportunities here. They also told us about regional and programming things that we could do around economic development, education, and health. Guess what? 3 big themes for Missouri. And they also told us we need to really think about greater collaboration and partnership, and I know you're talking about that as a system. So this again tees up well for us to think about our engagement and how we explain to people the value of public higher education in their lives. So a lot of things began to align as we went through this whole study. One of the things that happened is when I got all the results in back in May, we then put this together. I then went back out over the state again. I spent from mid-June till actually about a week ago, I hit again all regions of the state again and community conversations, because we wanted to see if what we were learning matched up. I wanted to vet, is it the economy, education, and health? Is it? And yes, it is. When you sit in Versailles and you got 125 people in the room and they're seeing this, they're going, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm thinking. And when you get to hear that and see that firsthand, that is a powerful experience because you realize it. But what you do is you realize you're learning a lot of things that are beyond our scope. And this is what scares people. How about all the stuff you learn that you can't do? Gosh knows you learn things. For instance, did you know that Missourians are deeply concerned about their roads? Did y'all know that? Some people want their roads paved. Some people say, by God, don't ever pave my road, just give me new gravel. And some people just say, stay off my road and I'll be fine. You get all that. Well, my point is, we need to know about transportation, but that may not be an issue that we don't pave roads. That's not our niche, but we need to know about it. So what's important for those of us that sit in leadership is to say, you got all this stuff swirling. Well, then how do you bring it down so that we understand what we own, what we lead on, what we co-deliver, and what is maybe important but we just don't address? Let me give you a great example of this. One of the things that you will find across the state of Missouri that's really important is broadband access. And some of you were in a meeting with me yesterday about that. It's really important. Close to 70% of rural Missourians don't have access. But remember that many people that live in rural Missouri work in urban Missouri. It's an important thing. We sometimes divide ourselves out rural and urban, but quite frankly, it is one state, and this state either goes forward or backwards together. And that's something we have to help people begin to understand. You also find that if you go to some counties, and I'll use a county like St. Louis County, I was doing an extension council event there, and I started talking about broadband thinking they may not resonate with them, they may not care about this. I found there are huge areas in their county that don't have broadband access. I found it to be astounding. This is a huge issue. This is an area, though, we will not own because it's more than us. But we can lead and partner on this. So we are doing that. We are working very closely with partners across the state. The meeting we were in yesterday, some of you were in. Incredible energy around this. But this is important for us as leaders to think about. What do we own? What do we lead on? What do we partner in? And then maybe there are some things we need to know about, but we don't need to do. Again, that's part of prioritization. I've heard you talk about being more strategic. And I think this is a good visual way to think about that. And that's how we're trying to think in our world of extension and engagement, is those kind of things. So we know that these are 3 things that the university can own, because we can do good things in economic development. We can do good things in educational outreach, and we can do good things in health. We have the capacities already, or we can grow those. So I'm going to challenge you as a group of thinkers to think about this. You know, what is that target? Because overarchingly, each institution is going to have its own flavor, its own uniqueness, but as an institutional structure, or there's some big themes here, we need to hold metrics to them again to think about how are we driving the economy, how are we driving education, and how are we driving ourselves forward in health. And as you think about metrics, I think those are easy things for us to then communicate with our stakeholders. Because when they can see job growth and job creation, when they can see educational excellence in their community, they can see more kids going to college, when they can see healthcare improve and their access to that improve, that matters to people. And now you're touching every Missourian in the state of Missouri. And that's really, really important. Because what you find is, when I have the sidebar conversations with people, and they come up to me after the event, we've had our barbecue brisket, and we've enjoyed that in the church basement, together. And they come up, and this is what they talk about to me. Local matters. Where I live matters. And thank you for coming to my community to hear my story. It matters in Taney County. Thank you for being the first person to go to this particular research center at WordAC. Y'all know where WordAC is? Some of you do. You got to want to go to WordAC to go to WordAC. I mean, you don't go through there. It's a destination. So you go to WordAC and they say, you know, you're the first person at your level to be here, and we don't remember. That's important, folks, because local matters to Missourians. It also is responsiveness. People want you to respond. They appreciate the fact anytime we respond to a need, a question, whether it be in our extension offices or anywhere, be responsive. Even if you can't solve it or answer the question, just be responsive. Next thing they say to me is continue to be trusted. One of the things I found with MU Extension is we are a trusted partner. We are trusted in those communities, and we want to maintain that. We want to grow it. And then finally, this idea of engagement. Engagement happens at many levels, but the ultimate thing in engagement, when you think about university context of engagement, is when we bring their best ideas and our best ideas together, and we come up with a common solution that's best for them and for us as a state, because it is sustainable then, and that's changing lives. And at the end of the day, that's what higher education has the greatest opportunity to do, because there are thousands of Missourians who will never come on our campus, but this gives us a chance to really change their lives. So beyond the data, when you think about all things Missouri, these are the themes that come out. Now, what are some things we're doing to reimagine? This is where you pivot to, okay, you learn this stuff, now what are you doing different? What are you going to do different? We are looking at a new staffing model. We have 232 off-campus faculty all over the state. Typically, those folks focus in areas like agriculture, 4-H, human environmental sciences, community development, business development. We are merging some of those together. I'm not going to go too deep in the details with you today, because that's a document in itself. But we are working through that. And it's important to tell you that we've launched a model out there. Now we're doing an iterative process. So we have our faculty across the state. We have our stakeholders working with us to engineer that and create that, because that creates partnership. When they co-create it with us, they're going to co-own it with us. And it's going to give them an opportunity to then invest in it at their county level and perhaps through other ways. So you're going to see us move from not only being a regional model, but also having greater county-based people that are really embedded in communities. So again, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds at this level, but I want you to know we're working on that. We expect this to become reality sometime probably in the summer of 2018. And moving forward beyond that, there may be some transitional years for some of that. But we are obviously looking forward to that, because I think that can, again, attune this institution much more deeply in community. Right now, for instance, if you look at us, we have coverages, and this gives you some coverage idea. If you look at our nutrition, you'll see a lot of counties that are missed by that. If you look in a livestock area, which is a traditional area for us, we do great work in that. But we've got a lot of areas we can't cover. And the reason is this regional model that was set up in the 1960s had almost 500 people in the system out across the state. Today I have 232. We haven't changed this system really in 50 years. Well, I think, we don't drive the same cars, don't wear the same clothes, we don't have the same hairstyles we did 50 years ago. So we need to really think about how we re-engineer, but we have to do it with Missourians and not to Missourians. Really important clarity around how we do work and how we work with people. Because what it may look like going forward is something that puts triages together in counties to work on local touch, working with maximum impact, and the kinds of things you see listed there being very, very important, that we partner and collaborate with people as we think about how we work with them in these areas across the state. Another map to show you this would be how we engage with counties and how we deal with field issues and sort of cross-cutting issues in business and labor and workforce development. There's some great ways to bring the full university into this pipeline so that people in the College of Education can work with our 4-H specialists and help deliver better educational programming across the state, for instance. There's ways to do that, and we want to be an innovative thought leader about how you do that here at Missouri. So again, staffing is one big issue we're looking at. Another one we're looking at is all things Missouri. Remember I talked about all the data coming in and the curator of the data? We are now that, and we're going to launch a new data center that will be out there for everybody in the state of Missouri. The launch of that, you can go to it now, but ultimately the launch of that, which will be branded a little differently when it goes public, will be 2018. And it will be a data center that allows people to see things like this and this and this. It'll allow them to see maps of their area and how they can begin to do planning and how we can consult with them to show them better ways to do business in their communities. This is empowering communities from the University of Missouri. This is a new way of engagement. It's how to get people excited. And I can tell you that county commissioners are really excited about this, and so are economic development people, because they can now pull this data in one shop, rather than having to go all over the state to find stuff about their areas. So we got a great team working on this, and this is actual stuff that they're working on that you see here in front of you. Another area we're looking at is an MU engagement portal. When I came to the university, I realized that there was a lot of engagement going on that nobody knew about. We have a College of Education that engages in every single school district in the state of Missouri, 524 school districts. Catherine Cheval and her team do a phenomenal job. We've got a great arts and sciences. Pat Oker and the College of Arts and Sciences engage in STEM education all over the state. We've got a 4-H program that reaches over 200,000 kids a year. But guess what? None of those three things were tethered together. So you got people in the same school, same community, working on similar projects, and they're not even talking to each other. They don't even know each other's there. Well, if we pull that together, and so we created this engagement council at the University of Missouri in Columbia. I initially was going to have 20, 25 people in this council. I realized that's not going to work at the university because a lot of people want to play in this space. We now have 140 people on this council. It is no longer a council, it's a movement. It's a movement of engagement where faculty are beginning to realize and want to be a part of taking their knowledge out to the people of Missouri. This is a game changer for Missouri. And what we're going to do now, we have inventoried the whole university. We have 400 and some entries into that. And we are now going to create, we're already testing it now, an MU Engagement Council inventory. So if you are a science teacher and you're in, pick a town, I don't know, let's pick one. Let's pick another one, Springfield. I'm in Springfield, Missouri, and I'm teaching weather in the 8th grade, something on meteorology. And I want to be able to bring a meteorologist into my classroom. And there's a meteorologist on campus who's willing to do engagement, and they're in this system. You as an 8th grade science teacher will be able to click on a thing, go straight to that faculty member. That faculty member will now be able to interact with you. And for the first time, you will be able to get that faculty member either by distance education or by coming and doing a live presentation in your classroom. You talk about changing kids' lives, that's a game changer. Because you have unleashed the university in a good way on the people of Missouri. And I can tell you when people see this, as I present it across the state, they can't wait. We're going to launch this in January. It'll go public. And I will tell you that it is scary because, oh my gosh, wow, wonder what the demand's going to be. I think demand's going to be really high in some areas. I think other areas it won't be. But that tells us something too. Maybe we're doing some things we need to retweak or reframe how we do some things. So this is exciting work. And this will include all of our traditional work we do in extension as well as the greater university. So I've got people from the College of Medicine, healthcare, journalism, all the different colleges are engaged in this across the entire university. We also are working on another project. Mark McIntosh is back there. Mark and I have been working very closely in the research and extension nexus between the two of us. And we have built a partnership now between research and extension. And we have created, it was already in his shop, something called the Broader Impact Network, which was about trying to do this. It came out of National Science Foundation. And we are now sharing a person. Some of you know Susan Reno. Susan now works between our offices, and her job is to bring research into relevance into people's lives. One of the great things I will remember, I was talking with a faculty member who was telling me when I first got to Missouri about his wonderful research and how globally it was recognized and how he was really concerned that the people of Missouri, much less legislators perhaps and policymakers, didn't understand the great work he was doing around the world. And when he finished telling me how bad that was, I said, well, what difference does that make in Sedalia? And he says, I don't know. I said, that's the problem. I said, there's nothing wrong with doing things around the world, but it's got to matter to people here. We've got to figure out how to connect that so they can see that connection. Once they do, they're fine with you doing the global things. And global is great, but you have to make it relevant to the people that you serve here. So we're working really hard, and this is going to give us that opportunity to do that, to connect research and extension together in a more way. Another graphic to show this, and we're going to call it the connector, is this, because it will move our area of research and extension together and create a culture of engagement at the university. If you'll notice there, you'll see the other logos of the other schools because we want to be inclusive of Missouri S&T, UMKC, and UMSL on this as well. Because we think this is a game changer again as we try to push information out into that pipeline so that our people on the ground can use this in a really relevant way for Missourians. The last thing I will share with you about our reimagination is something called Nexus at Mizzou. Nexus at Mizzou was actually started before I got here, and they started about 9 or 10 months before I got here. This is a new e-commerce online learning platform, and it's interactive. So let's play this out. Let's say somebody is in Warsaw, Missouri, and they decide to go online and take a course from us in livestock. I'll use something very simple, very much a part of who we are in Missouri. There's a lot of livestock grown, especially beef cows, grown in this state. So they go on. Well, let's say that particular woman that's a cattleman, part of the Cattlemen's Association. So she decides, you know, I really have enjoyed this. So she maybe has taken this online learning experience. Well, while she's there, she registers with us, and we find out that she also has a son who is 14 years old who may like to be in 4-H. We're going to be able to capture all that knowledge, and we're going to be able to go back and promote and market the other opportunities of the University of Missouri. We're right now talking about how this could interplay with recruitment. So if you've got children in your family and they're in high school age, maybe there's an opportunity now to begin to recruit. This is a game changer. This has been, again, a big investment. It's one that we think will pay off in the long run, and it will go live sometime. Parts of it will actually go live probably in January, and then when you roll into the spring, it'll become more relevant. We're going to be testing some things January, February, rolling that out, but it will become live within the year. We'll be Nexus at Mizzou. It'll be everywhere, so you'll begin to see that. And that's going to be a wonderful thing that we haven't ever had, and very few places in the country have ever tried anything close to this again. So I've given you a ton of stuff. So what I'm going to do for a moment here, Marcy, is see if there are any questions. While I'm taking those, I'm going to ask Cindy Zaludicki to come up. She's got a couple people that are going to join us here at the front. I'm going to take a deep breath, and what questions do y'all have? We'll let you ask a few questions while they're coming up.
Yeah, any curator or any general officer or
the
chancellor. Any questions, comments?
Well, I will have a question if no one else will, which I'm sure surprises everybody.
It surprises all of us, but
Marshall, that actually, I was giving you a hard time, but that lived up to
well, good.
All the advance notices that
I was feeling the pressure, man.
Chairman Graham gave. And this is really interesting, obviously useful. How are you going to push this out? Because we in higher ed, it's my at least my belief and what I've seen is we tend to have silos. We tend to have silos on campuses, and we tend to have silos throughout the entire University of Missouri. How are you going to push this out to the marketing people, to the different people that need to use it?
I agree with your comment about silos, but I will also tell you this. I have not hit a silo yet that they didn't open the door. And that's with other institutions, whether it be UMSL, UMKC, or S&T, are on our campus. There is such a desire, and part of this is, I think, on day one of my time at the University of Missouri, I said, we are no longer going to be an island. We're going straight into the heart of the institution. We're going at it. Because if you look at the land grant model, it is based on great research, great teaching, and great extension and engagement. That is the three-part mission. And we're no longer going to be an island. We're not going to be protectionists and be over here in our own silo. So I took down our silo, number one. What that did, it sent a signal across the campus, and some of these folks that are in the room saw that happen. And we began to invite them into our space, and they in turn invited us into their space. There is a greater working relationship, and I think Garnett's here, Garnett Stokes. There's probably a greater relationship right now between my office and her office and Mark McIntosh than there's probably been, you'll ever see on any campus. We work constantly together. We're working together in tandem because the great things that are happening in teaching and the academic programs and research programs need to interact. When leaders behave that way at our level, it has an effect all the way down the system. We have deans calling us, wanting to be at our events. I had a dean here yesterday who spoke to you yesterday who reminded me, you have not taken me on the road yet, and I want to go. To me, that's not an issue. It's about leadership and about people's willingness to step forward in my role and not be protectionist. If I try to protect this and make it an island, nobody can participate. This is about opening this thing up. The other thing I will say as a part of that, people have started to believe this model, and when I interviewed, I used this. If you do public engagement well, if you do it really, really well, and you look at the great universities across the country that are doing it well, And many of them are private institutions, quite frankly. I'll use Duke University, which I know a lot about because we were in their shadow right next to them in North Carolina State. They do great engagement, not only in Durham, in North Carolina, in the state, but they're doing great engagement around the world. When you look at them, they've taken our playbook, and I'll use them as a great example, and they're doing engagement around the world. We have to understand we're not the only game in town, but I've learned that if you do public engagement really well, public support and public resources will follow. They will, because people will say, this is something, with all the priorities we could look at, this is something we want to believe in. This is it. And so that's a long answer to your question, but I think it also tells you the culture that we're trying to build here. You know, we've got a number of our stakeholders and some of our faculty that are from this area came in this morning because they're deeply interested in this. They know this is, I had somebody say this to me this morning, this is not just evolution, this is revolution. And it is, because it becomes that because you're changing the way people think. And I want the University of Missouri, not only at our campus, but the system as well, as appropriate, I want us to be the destination for how to do engagement right. That is it, every single day of my life. And I find that Missourians want that. I couldn't find a better place, environment, that people want this. They truly want it. I can be in the most deprived communities of Missouri, and they want this. And they say, well, thank God you're here, kind of thing, because this is what we want. And even those that maybe have been somewhat disenchanted with us in the past, they come back. When I go into communities now, and this gets me on your question, when I go into communities now, I have legislators coming to find out what I'm going to say. At first we had to invite them. Now they find out where I'm going to be and they come see. That's a change. And it's exciting because they want to engage. And I can show you that in chambers of commerce. I can show you that outside of our normal realms. People get excited about that, and we have to continually do that. My job's tiring because of that, but it's a big state and 114 counties and 6 million people, and I intend to see every single one of them before I'm done.
Well, you got me excited, so
Oh, good. Jeff.
Marshall, I appreciate what you're doing. I think I enjoyed your presentation and makes a lot of sense and a lot of things we've talked about. And a couple brief questions. You mentioned research and getting it to extension. And I guess just briefly, is that something that wasn't really happening that well? Or obviously they were doing a little bit of that, I'm sure, but.
It's always happened well in certain sectors. And I'll use agriculture as an example. Historically, if you look at extension, it was an agricultural, it came out of agricultural thought because in 1914, when extension was federalized, when it became a federal funding piece, the intent of the legislation was to go to those communities that were most in need. And in that day, it was rural agricultural. That's where poverty was. That's where people were scraping to get by. And so that's why the focus was there. Now we serve urban areas as well, and we serve them all because of that. So when you look at that, historically, if you use, I'll use animal science. We did a great job of moving that. But we haven't necessarily done a great job between, say, something in medicine, which we could do. We may have to do it differently. We may have to do it digitally. We may have to do it using one of our learning platforms. It may not be boots on the ground, but in today's world, we can do that. So some areas, yes. Other areas, absolutely not. But what I'm talking about is a broad engagement platform that allows us all to move that out. And I find faculty are excited about that. They're saying to me, you mean what I'm doing matters? I said, yeah, it can matter. We just got to help you frame it.
Thank you. One more
Curator
question.
Snowden, oh, I'm sorry. Curator Snowden has a question after you finish.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just one more quick question. And I really like what you mentioned about Nexus, and I know you all have been working on that. And that sounds tremendous. Does that connect in, or will it, in the future, will it connect into, or is that like a pathway to Canvas? Or I know UMKC is using Blackboard, and I know University of Missouri has some people on their own home-built system. Is that Nexus, or can you touch on that?
Yes, it will be a pathway to the university, no question. And in fact, Suzette and I have been talking about this, how do we link a lot of these platforms together? And we can do that. In fact, we're building it. The architecture we're using will allow us to do that. So we're going to be set up to do that. It's just
is that PeopleSoft?
You've just gone to the technology area. I don't know,
that's
Jeff,
all right.
And I apologize. I got guys that work on that every single day, and they know it, but they are really working through those nuances to make sure we can do that.
Thank you.
Marshall, you worked a long time in extension. So I assume when you went out, you probably got about what you expected. Is that a fair statement, or did things surprise you and were different than what you thought they might be?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you a lot for that question. I think there are many things that don't surprise me. I think what might maybe, I don't know if it surprised me, but it maybe energized me, is that I've had people say to me, you know, you're giving us something to hope for again. People, and let me say this way, and I shared this with the deans recently and have several times on campus. People love the University of Missouri, and they know they're supposed to. We've got to, though, maybe create the narrative that, again, reframes why that is. They know this place was created in 1839. They know that it was important. It was land grant. They understand there's a deep-seatedness, first public west of the Mississippi. There's something there about this, Jeffersonian in some ways because of the alignment with University of Virginia and some of the imagery they think about. I've gotten down to that depth with them, and when you and they get emotional when they talk about it because they know it's and they want to be they want to come back. So I guess I have been invigorated and energized by the fact of what we can do. Surprised is probably not the right term, but man, we can do good things here. And I have no desire to be anywhere else in the world. This is it.
I loved your comment about revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And really revolution is kind of a bad connotation to it because it's, you know, combative and so forth. But
yeah.
In this sense, I think revolution is a tremendous word.
And maybe a better word is renewal. This is a renewed idea. You know, I've heard Alex Cartwright talk about it, to give him credit. He talks about the new land grant. And what does that mean? One of the first things he met with us on the first day or two he was with us, he talked about what is the land grant today? Yeah. We get the chance to create that, and that's exciting. I'm not going to take any more questions right now. We'll take some more in a few minutes. Kevin, hold that one.
Sounds good.
I won't, go ahead.
It's not a question, it's just an affirmation.
Please.
I just wanted to say another area of intentionality for Marshall has been around this notion of inclusion, right? And this notion of extension
Absolutely.
engagement and really thinking about the synergistic intersections of that in our inclusive efforts, particularly around a metric-driven approach. So I just want to, again, affirm his collaborative spirit in that regard and make sure that the curators were aware of that.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for adding that. Marshall,
I'm going
we're
to turn
it back
this
to
to
you.
Cindy Zaludicki, and let me tell you about Cindy. Cindy is our regional director for urban Missouri. She covers, and listen to this, Kansas City and St. Louis. She has an assistant or associate director that actually lives in St. Louis, but she's based here in Kansas City. And I wanted her to bring a few stakeholders forward so that you could talk about it. And you're going to have a person here with a council perspective, a person here to talk about urban extension, and also a person to talk about some partnerships. So let me pause there, and I'm going to turn it to Cindy, and she'll facilitate this conversation for a few minutes.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about some highlights of urban extension. I want to start out by saying we're uniquely positioned to address the grand challenges that have been identified here in the urban region. We have 93 faculty and staff members working in the Kansas City area and the St. Louis area with communities to bring about multidisciplinary approach to and research and educational resources from the university out to the community to address those community needs. We work with youth, we work with adults on developing leadership skills, community capacity through programs like 4-H, neighborhood leadership programs, business and community development. We also provide programming across all socioeconomic groups. Across the county, we partner with hundreds of community organizations, neighborhood groups, nonprofits, government entities, businesses, schools, churches in both the St. Louis area, metropolitan area, and also in the Kansas City metropolitan area. We're in the community every day with a talented staff and faculty members who are hardworking, passionate, committed, collaborative in their approach. This workforce includes faculty and staff, also extension council members and volunteers that are working with the communities. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to 3 of these talented, hardworking faculty and extension council volunteers. And you're going to get a chance to hear from each one of them. First up will be Valencia Broadus. And Valencia is currently the chair of the Jackson County University of Missouri Extension Council. She's also chair of the Urban Region Council. She is an alum of MU and is a practicing attorney and very active and committed community volunteer. Her enthusiasm and passion for working with youth is contagious. And then next we're going to hear from Matt Brillhart. And Matt is the Urban County Program Director for Jackson County. Matt's been with Extension for about almost 4 years now. He came to us with a strong background in organizational and nonprofit leadership. And Matt's doing a terrific job of leading Extension's efforts in the urban area. And finally, we have Gerardo Martinez, who's the Alianzas Program Director, and who's with MU Extension and the Institute of Human Development here at UMKC. And Gerardo worked with one of our community partners and also was a volunteer for Extension through our Master Gardener program and Eating from the Garden program, and before he joined us as the Alianzas Director. Before we get started with the presentation, I'd also like our faculty and staff members that are here from the urban region to stand up in the audience. Thank you for coming. And then we also have some members of our local extension councils and the state extension council. So if you guys could stand up. Thank you. Thank you for coming and supporting us today. So Valencia, you're up.
Good morning to everyone. M-I-Z-Z-O-U. Oh, but UMKC, I'm from everybody else too. Did that rhyme a little bit? I just wanted to say I'm from Columbia, Missouri. I graduated from Mizzou's law school, went to another undergrad, but I'm from Columbia, so I knew about all the schools. And I'm excited to talk about my council role, especially because growing up in Columbia, Missouri with all the schools around, I did not understand the importance of higher education. Through some challenges in my life, stuff like that, some things happened, and my first introduction to the University of Missouri-Columbia was cleaning apartments of Mizzou students. I just want to say. So that's how I learned about, a campus, but I was very young when that happened. So then through some other instances, graduated high school, and I said, I think I want to be a judge. And that's all I knew is I want to be a judge. But I didn't know how, I didn't know anything except that was a dream that somehow I saw a person. And so through people in the community of Columbia, they said, you want to be that? Well, you have to do this and do that and do this. I said, how do I do that? Well, you have to go take an ACT, so people started telling me how to do these things. The reason that story is important is only because so many of our young people in our communities, I don't care what city they're from or county, all these things happen, so they don't understand how to get into an awesome MU university or community colleges. They kind of just say, I want to be something, and then sometimes through osmosis they get there, and sometimes they don't. So my passion for over 25 years has been about helping young leaders to have a dream and teach them how to make it happen. So when I moved here to Kansas City 20 years ago and had the opportunity to work at an awesome law firm, I learned through some of that work that Kansas City has awesome stuff to offer. Because I'm from a little Columbia, so I'd never really been out of Columbia. So I'm here in Kansas City working with these, awesome people. And so I'm learning about government and all these things. And so then I actually got more involved in politics a little bit. Okay, so did that. Then from there, our mayor appointed me to the University of Extension Council. And I said, what's that? So as you can see, I'm living in Mizzou, all that. Never knew what extension was, never heard of it. I just went to the school, the law school, graduated, then, come here. So through learning about extension, I said, wow, look at all these resources they have for everybody. Let me please help to get some of this in the community. So, okay, so I go in and Cindy was there. And then of course, met Matt, when Cindy became our regional director. And learning about extension, there's a lot to learn about all the resources that come from the research of our university systems, all 4 campuses. And then how do we get that into the community? So through our leaders at Extension, the staff, they taught us, council people, how to do that. So as you probably already know, I'm just going to read it just to make sure I'm real clear on this. The mission of University of Missouri Extension is to improve Missourians' lives by addressing highest priorities through the application of research-based knowledge and resources. I know you all know that, but I just wanted to tell you kind of really what our role is as Extension Council. And so through my 6 years now being on Extension Council, the Jackson County part first, I learned about the University Extension. We're kind of the front door or a front door to the universities. We're out there touching people first through whether it's 4-H or nutrition programs, business development programs that come from what our systems give us, and we put it out there. I'm like, that's pretty interesting stuff. And the staff, they do all that great work. So from there, Dr. Marshall, and we just really love him. I'm just going to tell you, he's apple pie. I'm just telling y'all, but he's great stuff. So him just kind of giving us some new energy as to things that we can do. So when I think about extending our knowledge, as he shared, it's about extending knowledge to individuals and families. Well, who are those people? Of course, it's students, it's families, it's businesses, it's educators. So we get to go and do that, but also we get to talk to politicians. So they allowed me to be on the council, learn a whole bunch, and then they allowed me to become the president of the Jackson County Extension Council. And so now that I'm there, ruling with the iron fist, I'm just kidding. But helping us all to really get out more as extension councils and talk to our legislators, and we go to the state, and they'll allow us to go to DC sometimes. And really, because we can lobby, we know that our extension staff, they can't lobby, but I can lobby. I can go and say, hey, we do awesome work, and give them the numbers of how we leverage dollars and our resources to make great things happen for all of Missouri. And so then we get to kind of, and Matt, he'll tell you that later, we get to bring in some dollars to help us. So saying that, I want to tell you about the impact also, though, of extension, not just from me being a council member, being able to network, but because I work a lot with students in Kansas City specifically, I work a lot with the school districts, and I help to do ACT prep. We do career coaching. We have a league of people that come, and attorneys and other people who just mentor young folks. So what happened is I had a young person on June 30th of this year. He's graduated, done ACT, had a 20 ACT, I'm just sharing, 20 ACT, he graduated and everything, and he was told, well, just go ahead and just go to Penn Valley, that's all, you can do. But I didn't tell him that. It was where he was, his school, and I said, no, but is that where you want to go? And he says, well, I've always wanted to go to Mizzou. I said, really? I didn't know that. He says, well, nobody cares what I think, Miss V. They call me Miss V. I said, okay, well, since you've been helping us with extension, and doing different work, because we try to get our high schoolers to volunteer a little bit, and help other kids do stuff or get into a 4-H club, learn entrepreneurship, just do some things so that we can get that on their resumes. So this young man, he says, I've always wanted to go to Mizzou. I've always wanted to do pre-engineering. Well, I didn't know that either. So I emailed Miss Cindy. I said, okay, Cindy, we have a student here. He's awesome. He's good in math and science. He wants to be an engineering student, but no one's told him about Mizzou and that he can get there. I said, so he really can do it. He has the study skills. He would be a qualified student. His ACT was low, but it was only because at his school they didn't have pre-calculus. They didn't put him in the classes to navigate him there. But we got to see his talent through our program, so Cindy emailed back, and then she emailed Dean Devlin, Assistant Dean Devlin. And so Dean Devlin He emails back at 11:55 p.m. And I'm like, whoa. Well, I was up working. And he's like, well, Valencia, if this student is really serious about wanting to get into Mizzou and do a great job, we will help him. Many emails later, we talked to people at Youth Futures. We talked to people on Mizzou's campus. We did everything within a couple of months, and even down to the wire of April 15th, when I took him down to campus to get enrolled, he didn't have all of his paperwork in. Well, his parents didn't know what to do. We go down there. We actually talked to Carlos Taylor, and we talked to the individuals in the arts and science department. I mean, we went to all these apartments while they were in orientation. He leaves there with double the money that he had, because what he had to do in order to get into the pre-engineering program, he had to pass this math test that he didn't know about, okay? So he takes it the first time on, I think it was August the 6th, excuse me, and he got a 50%. We got to get a 70% in order to get into the pre-engineering program. So we got him a tutor from actually UMKC, Dr. Eddie. He teaches math to the professors. And for 2 days he tutored him. And that young man's natural talent came out at a 94% on that math test. So he went from being on academic probation, meaning they accepted him into Mizzou because he paid all his money, academic probation. Once he got that score back in, they took him off probation. We got him down there. He's at housing. He's loving it. He is so happy. And his dad and aunt said, because his mom's not around, he's never been so happy. That's what extension does for the education side and all the other sides too. And I'm just proud that it's my school, my university, just helping us to get these kids in. Because a lot of the kids, we don't really know they're qualified, so to speak, because as you all know, Mizzou, they've said in 2018 that we will give a free ride to students who can qualify. Well, qualifying means the ACT, it means study skills, it means a whole lot of stuff. So extension, we have programs that they seriously are helping the kids to be eligible, not just get them in. We don't need them to get in and fail. So, you know, I talk a lot, so I'm going to finish there. What I just want to say is really glad to be here today, and thank you all for just having us, and thank you, Cindy, thank you, Matt, and thank you now, new friend. Yes. Amen. And of course, thank you, Dr. Stewart, everyone. Thank you all very much.
I will do my best to springboard off of that. Wow. Again, my name is Matt Brillhart. I'm the Urban County Program Director in Jackson County, and I'm going to try and I'll piggyback on some of the comments from Dr. Stewart as well as from Valencia and that Cindy commented. I'll go a little bit deeper to give you kind of some more specifics regarding some of the program areas, things that we're doing in the urban core. I'll probably speak more about Jackson County because that's the county I serve, but realizing I'll mention some things that are also happening within our region, which includes Clay and Platte County. One of the topics given to me to kind of speak about is, how is extension, relevant in the metro Kansas City area? And I will tell you, it's extremely relevant. There's kind of the stereotype that was mentioned earlier, kind of more the rural agriculture. Well, there's many other program areas within extension that definitely impact Missourians here in Jackson County. I feel the county itself is the most diverse in that we're very urban, very suburban, but then we also have a lot of rural areas. And so with that becomes challenges, but lots of opportunities in serving those different types of populations. One of the key areas that we do within the county is definitely health and nutrition. And so we have 25 plus, whether it's nutrition program associates or up to specialist level, which we have a couple here today. They're out in the schools and in the communities teaching nutrition education, and particularly in the schools, that is the only nutrition education they are receiving is from our staff. In many opportunities, it's the first time they've ever tasted a tomato. They've tasted a cucumber. What's the difference between a cucumber and a zucchini? And then with that, and I'll talk more about horticulture, many times they're getting into or partnering with some of the other areas within Extension is teaching them where their food even comes from. And what it looks like on the plant in a natural sense. And so from seed to any to actually the point of consuming it, our nutrition folks are out there really impacting the youth. But keeping in mind too, we do lots of nutritional programs that include families. We have a program called Cooking Matters. It's an extremely important program that we're teaching the families not only to cook nutritionally, but we're looking at other programs such as with our financial ed of how do you purchase healthy foods on a budget? You're only on food stamps or some type of financial assistance. How do you still live a very healthy lifestyle with these other challenges facing you? And Extension faculty and our staff are very much involved in that. And so that's very important. Youth development, and this definitely ties in with some things that Valencia said. We definitely have what we think of traditional 4-H. When you think of animals and all of that, really 4-H is a youth leadership program. And so we're really trying to focus more on that. One of our new programs is Youth Futures College Within Reach. And so we have about 25 plus high school youth that are engaged with that. Valencia commented about the mentoring component. That's definitely a piece of it. Next was getting ready to come up with that group of students, is they're going to be doing college visits. For many of them, it's the first time they've ever been actually on a college campus. Even here, they live in Kansas City. They've never physically been on the UMKC campus. They drive by it, they'll see it, they may know about it, actually walking into a building, breaking down that mystery of what is a college. That's a key component to that. But they're helping with the ACT scores, the entrance exam, all the intricacies of getting into college. This program is helping them reach. What a lot of people don't know too is we do a lot of what we call 4-H after school. And so we're in a lot of the schools here in Kansas City doing after school curriculum or using 4-H curriculum in after school and before school programs. A lot of it is STEM related, so we do a lot of robotics. But there's other programs that are happening too, whether it's videography, music production, aerodynamics. There's a lot of variety of other programs that is exposing youth to 4-H curriculum. And so that's definitely happening here within the greater Kansas City metro. Next is horticulture, and with that, there's lots of new terms. Of course, urban ag. Urban homesteading is kind of the new thing that we're looking at. But between our horticulture educators and specialists, they're working within the communities, some small farmers, micro farmers, but also through our master gardeners and our master naturalists. They're working in community gardens all throughout the Tri-County area. One is across from Kaufman Performing Arts Center's, the 18 Broadway. That's very much of an urban demonstration garden that Extension is very much involved and engaged in. Teaching people how to grow food. And what's also a component about that, I mentioned Master Gardener and Master Naturalist, about 30,000 hours combined of volunteer time within the communities that they're contributing. And so that's kind of the extended part of Extension is our volunteer piece. Some other things that are definitely happening within our program areas. Community development is another key area, and that happens in many capacities within the counties across the state, but particularly here in the urban area. Well, we're very much involved with a neighborhood group in the Palestine area and the surrounding neighborhoods with that. Up in Clay County, I'll put it under the community development. It involves many other program areas, but Grandparents as Parents program. It's a very big component, but that impacts the community. That is community development. Also, business development is very key. So we have a business development specialist that's working one-on-one with a lot of the small businesses, helping them get started, but then not only survive, but then get to the thrive stage. So there's many other areas of extension within the county that we're definitely engaged in. That our staff is out there fulfilling the mission. But those are the key areas that definitely within the extension umbrella, very relevant. Our staff is definitely the feet, the hands, and the heart of the mission out in the communities, working on one-on-one. Again, whether it's within the schools, within community centers, within community groups, other organizations. We partner with lots of other organizations to pull these programs off. So. Again, just a quick little snapshot of that, but I just want to reiterate again, the work that MU Extension does, again, a stereotype is very rural, but it's very, very impacting and very important within the urban areas. And there's more than enough work to go out there, and we see the need continuing to grow year after year. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity. Next, Gerardo Martinez will come up.
Thank you, Matt. Well, good morning, friends. Yes, my name is Gerardo Martinez. And just for the record, I used to have a beautiful, perfect accent till I moved to the state of Missouri, or Missouri. Seriously. So confusing sometimes. But it's a wonderful opportunity that you're giving me to express the love that I have for this program called Alianzas. Alianzas is the Spanish word for alliances. And this is a collaborative statewide program that was created back in 2001 with a partnership of MU Extension and UMKC, Institute for Human Development. So we were very proactive because from 2000 to 2010, there was a rapidly increase of Latinos moving into our state. So we're talking about, again, from 2000 to 2010, it was 79%. And how proactive we as a university were, since in 2001 was created this program to address the needs of the growing population of Latinos. So Alianzas strengthens the ability of MU Extension in different ways. So we had created about 3 years ago what is called a body of MU Extension Alianzas ambassadors who are located in different parts of the state trying to reach out the Latinos. So Alianzas comes and support and serve as a guidance to them to have a successful relationship with them, a partnership as well. So we employ a community of practice. So we have partnered with the Consulate of Mexico as they try to bring a nationwide initiative called the Binational Health Week. Many Latinos, they do not have the resources to be able to have a healthcare insurance. So we bring different partners on that sector to provide health screenings and education on this. So with those kind of fairs that we have throughout the state, we invite many of the MU specialists to come and share with the population, the Latinos, about MU Extension, not just in education, but also through 4-H, family nutrition education programs, and small businesses. Those three things, by the way, are the gates for the Latinos to come into the university. So nutrition, youth development, and businesses. So some of the values that the Latino embraces pretty highly are harmony and consensus. The American culture embraces two values very dearly, independence and freedom. So how do we bring them to work together? How do we become more culturally competent as educators in our state to be able to be more effective in bringing them into the university? So we provide, Alianzas provide trainings and it provides presentations throughout the state with a hope that these specialists and people out there in the community gain some of the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes to be able to be more effective working with Latinos. So we have worked and utilized our own people, our own entities within MU Extension in the university system. For example, LETI, which stands for the Law Enforcement Training Institute. In Branson, the police department was having difficulties to work with the Latinos because Latinos were pretty afraid. And as you may be aware, there are so many things going on out there that many Latinos are frightened. There's so much uncertainty, not just DACA with the youth, but also the parents. So we do not get into politics, but nevertheless, we connect with different lawyers throughout the state that know the immigration laws, and so we bring them and invite them to give conversations with them and helping them to understand what's happening. So we always trying to provide, again, ways for all the constituents throughout the state to know who is MU Extension, what is UMKC, and how can they have access to our programs. So we have also partnered with the Consulate of Mexico We have partnered as well with other entities, such as the Missouri Farm Bureau Insurance. At the last year, at the end of last year, they reached out, the University of Missouri, and wanted to, for the first time ever, open the Latino market. So met with several folks out there in Jefferson City, and so we provide some training, presentations. And so I remember with Randy Campbell and Mr. Blake Hurst, when we met in January also, they said, by September, we're gonna open this market. We're gonna reach out Latinos. And I said, wow, that's a pretty ambitious goal. So we're talking just a few months difference. And so, but nevertheless, about 2 weeks ago, went to their website, and then lo and behold, you click Spanish and kaboom, the whole website is all in Spanish now. So they have hired several bilingual, able to, again, help the Latino market and just make it grow. And Alianzas was instrument in helping them to realize that, but I love that they thought of a MU extension, that they thought of our university. Instead of going to a third party, they came to us. Though we had a relationship established for many years, they believed that we could help them with this. Another institution also in Jefferson City is the FCS Financial. Farm Credit Services also, they have never had success in bringing Latino youth into the internship program. So they reached out to university, went to Alianzas, and we've been able to have already some Latino youth participating in the internship. And we are now also exploring ways to reach out Latino farmers for as well, they're growing in our state. Again, I love what we do, and I believe that Alianzas goes very aligned with the future that we are embarking in, building our future together. For the first time, Dr. Marshall Stewart says, hey, we need to hear about Latinos, also what is it they had to say. So we have 4 community conversations, one in Branson, one in Kansas City, and 2 in San Luis. So we have people from the Hispanic Economic Development Corporation, we have people from Mary Rhodes, Guadalupe Center participating. So many of the answers that we have here came from many Latinos as well. And, and I'm very appreciative of that. So in conclusion, today, the University of Missouri continues to be proactively positioned to support the evolving Missourian communities, where many Latinos residents are arriving. Through the work of Alianzas, we hope that we can continue our partnership between MU Extension and the University of Missouri system. And just to end this, I love this quote from Nelson Mandela. He says, if you talk to a man in a language that he understands, that will go to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. This is the work that we are embarked on. Building our future together is listening our constituents in their hearts and what are their needs. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Now you see why my work's so much fun. I mean, when you got an A team like this, it's kind of easy. What I want to do is I'm going to click on a couple things that we're going to open up for questions, and sort of you can ask them questions too, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Let me hit a couple slides here. And again, I want to remind you, you've got a stakeholder here. Your first speaker today really gave you the stakeholder, the constituent experience, person that just has become deeply involved and obviously recruited a young person to the University of Missouri. What a wonderful story. You got one of our top talent. I told Chancellor standing out there, this is a guy I'm not going to let it get away, because he really understands the urban situation and he gets it, and he understands how to take the great stuff at the university and bring it to that audience. You heard Geraldo today talk about the work we're doing there and the partnership we have with UMKC. We also have partnerships similar to that with UMSL and also Missouri S&T. We have faculty connected there already. This is legacy for us. We also have faculty connections with Lincoln University, our other 1890 land grant university, the 1890 land grant university that's here in the state of Missouri. So it's important for you to know those are legacy partnerships that we're continuing to build on. When you look beyond that, some things that I want you to be aware of. You guys at your tables, we should have another handout for you that is a compilation of what you did in July. there was a whole list. You guys actually came up with, I think it was 65 ideas in about 30 minutes of things you'd like to see done. Well, I want you to know that that's a list, and some of you, there were metrics on some of those. You'll remember that activity. It was kind of a wide-ranging discussion for those that are new to the board. There's all kind of stuff on that. What I want you to do as a board, and this will be very helpful to me, and so I'm going to ask you to do some homework if I can. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
What I'm going to ask you to do, because I know I want to be respectful of time today, and this is true for anybody in the audience too. You've got a color, kind of an orangey looking sheet there. What I would like for you to do for me, and I ask you for this, is go through that list, or if there's something that's not on that list and you think this is an engagement kind of activity that I'd really like to see the university, and it can be system or individual institution, take on. I think if they would do this, this could make a difference. And then in those blanks there, show me a couple of metrics of how we would measure that. It's good to do activity, but you got to be able to measure your success. So those things are really important. So a homework assignment that I'm going to give you and all of our constituents that are here today, if you would take that, and you may decide not to use the sheet you've got there, you may just want to email it to me. I really need that, because what's getting ready to happen is, if you look at the screen, we've done a board development session in July. We've got an opportunity now to refine that list, and now we've got an opportunity to set some priorities for the system. And having the curators engaged in that process as we begin to think about how we work with the various institutions is really, really important. So again, I would ask you as curators to take some time. I know you've got a lot on you. Also, again, other staff that are here and our stakeholders that are here, take some time and read through that and then add some ideas. We want the ideas. I cannot have too many ideas. I need tons of ideas, and then we'll have to prioritize. That's fine, but you'll help us with that. You can take that sheet and say, here's 2 things I think really would be good, or maybe this is just one. If you don't do anything else, do this one. That will help us, because what's going to happen is we are in the process of setting up a system engagement working group. We've already assembled one time on a telepresence call. We had representatives from each campus. I'm going to be asking the chancellors to help me identify some others from those campuses. Right now we had one representative from each campus. We want to build that out a little bit. President Choi had this idea, which is a great idea, about having faculty go out on the road and do presentations. We were already in the process of doing some of that at the Columbia campus. So rather than having 2 systems kind of awkwardly trying to work together, he asked if we would just kind of put that together in some way. And so we're doing that with this working group. We're going to be looking to our other sister institutions to help us with an inventory of the engagement work they do. That portal I showed you earlier, we are more than open to create a way for their information to migrate into that system over time, so that if a person wanted to go to that point, and that could actually be a system connector there, and they wanted to see something going on at Missouri S&T, for instance, they could click there and see how to get to a faculty member there, just like they could at Mizzou. Does that make sense? So we want this thing to open up. I've already spent a lot of time, talent, and resources of getting this system ramped up, so why not bring the others in and work collaboratively in this? This is not about who's number one. This is about serving Missourians. And I think if we can take that mindset, and that's certainly the collaboration, the partnership we seek, because I think if we do all things Missouri the right way, it can be something that really speaks well for all of us. So we're going to be doing an engagement inventory, working with this working group. We also, if you look at this list here, with faculty, students, alumni, athletics, we're doing a lot of partnerships right now. It was mentioned to me earlier today, said, where is your partnership with athletics going? Athletics, as you might know, Jim Sturk asked us if we would identify an athletics rep on every extension council in the state of Missouri, and we are doing that right now. They're clicking in right now. So each council is going through a process where there'll be an athletics representative that'll connect to his office. We're also looking at doing that with our alumni. We're also looking at doing that with other facets of the university that are interested. And I think there's ways, again, to have connectivity with the other institutions, because remember, extension councils are elected and or appointed in the communities. So what happens is those are stakeholders. They're not our employees. They are advocates for us. And that's what Valencia was talking about. She represents that. So this is a great opportunity for us to build out a bigger network in the state of Missouri. So again, the homework is to take those two documents and give us some feedback on those and going forward. So again, this gives you, again, the next steps that we'll be working on. It also will tell you this. I have been told this over my life, and actually Melanie Barger asked me to do this for the Missouri 100 a few weeks ago. She says, you need to tell them something to do. Well, this became the to-do list, and I gave them 5 things. And you know, I found that it resonated well. So I've been using this ever since. If every one of us that has any affiliation with the university, all of us, if we would lead 3 engagement connecting activities, just 3, within a year, think about the power of that. And that's not something I have to trigger. That's something you can do. Each of us can do that because we all have networks. Each of us can recruit 10 students. Now, I had one person say, my gosh, that's a lot of kids. I said, right now I'm getting 0 from you. Give me 5. I'll take 5. But all of us can do that. And this is not just unique to the Mizzou campus. This is all of us. We can do that. Just give me 5, right? I'm not going to point anybody else, Snowden. But anyway, so 10. I think there are 10 young people that you can connect with some way through networks you have, and we can do that. Speak at 6 events. Now, some people say, I'm not a great speaker. It's not about being a great speaker. It can be at the coffee shop with 3 of your friends, and you're speaking about the university and telling the great things we do. If each one of us advocates once per week with our policymakers, just imagine what that would do. We've asked all of our county offices, for instance, in the next year to make sure that every legislator in the state of Missouri sees an extension program of some kind within the year. Just come and experience it. We're not asking you to make a decision on it. Just come see it. Because I will tell you, once you see the power of what these people do, it's life-changing. And there's no question that it's a good investment as a part of the university investment. And then mentor one student. I don't care what school they go to, we all have a responsibility to do that. Because I will guarantee you, there's not a single one in this room, you know, we all live a very good life in some way. And I can tell you, had someone not mentored me, I would not stand here today. And that's our responsibility to give it back. So that's something I really believe in. And so I took the challenge when Melanie said that to me, and I said, I'm going to do that. And so I've started doing this, and I found people like the idea that there's clear numbers. This is a to-do. And if we can get a few thousand people doing this, we can change Missouri. And we can change the metric and the visibility and the perceptions that perhaps people have of higher education. I'm more concerned about that than anything in Missouri. You know, you asked a question a while ago, John, about that, and I really believe that there's a great opportunity here to reframe higher education. And I will guarantee if University of Missouri does well in that, all ships will rise together. And that's a good thing. And we need to think about that and how we can do that. With that, I'll say thank you, and I'll take your questions, and I also kept them up here in case you got questions for them. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think Curator Phillips had a question as we paused, and then Curator Chapman had a question as we paused.
I do. A couple of comments. Your team was very inspiring. You've got, boots on the ground. There's nothing to replace that. And I think I told you the first time you made a presentation that I was so inspired by what you're doing already that when I end up retiring more from my practice, I'd like to volunteer for the Extension Service.
And we've got that on record. So,
okay.
And now it's recorded.
Saying it publicly.
I got him. So I would expect everybody else to say the same thing, but go ahead.
At our retreat, you may recall, we talked about our various campuses, and we talked about MU Health being the 5th campus.
Yes.
And we also talked about Extension being the 6th campus. And in some respects, maybe the most important because you are our outreach to have Missouri appreciate what's available. That's part of our land grant. And as we as curators learn more about what you're doing, we realize the critical nature. Now, I just wanted to highlight your involvement and Gary Allen's involvement in expanding. We had a nice presentation on urban effect of extension. I'd like for you to comment on the extension of broadband into rural Missouri. Different parts of it have some broadband coverage, but there was a breakfast meeting yesterday morning, very early in the morning, that you and Gary attended, and frankly, it was teed up for the two of you to have leadership roles, And can you comment on the importance of it and what you see the prospects are of moving forward, knowing that the university doesn't have those dollars and the state doesn't have those dollars, and what you can do with it as the extension service if we can make that happen?
You will notice earlier I talked about the three big drivers in Missouri: economy, education, health. Show me a community that has great economy and they'll have great schools and great health care. Show me a community that has great health care, you find the other two. I can take you to community after community after community where one of those things is failing, and the common denominator you will find across the board, urban and rural, is the lack of broadband access. It is the one fundamental thing you will find that's missing across the board. I found that in my first 3 or 4 weeks here. Began to think about it a lot. Fast forward, I decided when I went to the Farm Bureau Convention in December that I would see if that, in North Carolina terms, if that dog would hunt. So I threw it out there, and let me tell you, the room electrified because Farm Bureau, because it is such a statewide organization, it went electric. About a month and a half later, I did the same thing with Missouri 100. Marcy, you were there. You saw. And very different group in some ways because one is very much outreach all over the state. A lot of concentration in terms of Missouri 100 are people, oftentimes they're from urban areas that have that access. Not all, but many do. But I found electric. So I found something that gripped. What happened then, so you know, is Chris Chin, new director of agriculture, picked it up as her #1 priority. We then performed a working group with Farm Bureau, with Department of Agriculture, Governor's Office, Department of Economic Development, and there are some others involved, but those are the primary ones. I went to, actually Gary and I sat with Moon Choi and asked him if he was okay with us being involved. Absolutely, he said do it, and I explained to him then we cannot own this, but we can partner and lead in it. That's a very different thing. And remember the bullseye I showed you earlier. This is a leadership and area that we can be a leader in. Because I think fundamentally, if we don't figure this out for Missouri, we will never reach the potential of what we can do. Outstate Missouri, if you go across the state, we grow more stuff than anybody in the country. I think we're the 3rd or 4th most diverse ag state in the country, more food and agriculture stuff grown here. The problem is we lose a tremendous amount of value because we lose value-added agriculture. Value-added agriculture and value-added foods, whether it be animal or human, are going to other states for processing. There's a lot of it happening that way. We got to figure out how to hold that wealth here because when you look back 25 years ago when you lost the glove factory and you lost the shoe factory in these local communities and then nothing's come back, food manufacturing and processing can be one of those many things that we can do. However, you will not grow that part of the economy if you don't have broadband access. You will not have access to health care if you don't have broadband access. People tell me their kids leave, go off to school, never come back. Why? They're not connected. So it always comes back to this. I've sat with numerous county commissioners and government leaders and citizens in general who would say to me, why is broadband, I don't really know if I want that in my community or not. Do I really need that? Well, let me tell you, when I talk to them about economic growth, I talk to them about educational excellence, talk to them about health care and their kids having somewhere to come back, it changes the conversation. So broadband became really big to me really quickly here, and I realized if we could get enough surge on this. Now, fast forward, we know the state is in a situation where they can't put a lot of money in, if anything. We also know that it's a tough sell because it's hard to do this work. But the thing that has been very encouraging, and even yesterday, John, was, and I think you were still there, the electric membership cooperatives are very engaged in this work. In fact, Comoy Electric is probably the best in the country at doing this right now. They're the national model in many ways, and I applaud them. So we're beginning to work with those kind of groups. We've also seen that there's a financial industry sector that's really involved in some investment. Obviously, the last mile is a hard thing with this. How do you get it in those most remote places? And in particular in agriculture, and certainly Darrell, you'll understand this from your perspective, that it's not enough to get it to the farmhouse, you got to get it to the farm because that's where the technology has to be able to use. So I can tell you that yesterday morning I was enthusiastic when I came out of there, more so than I was before, because I can see the synergy. What's going to happen is there's going to continue, this group wants to meet again. They want to continue to lead people in that think about the financing, that think about the infrastructure, government, public, it may be some public-private partnership. Ron Wood, many of you know Ron, an avid alumni for University of Missouri and a great supporter of the system, has been very engaged in this in the Kansas City area and is driving that. So Gary, his team with Mornet and the whole staff have been extraordinarily helpful. But I will tell you that it's one of those things that, I get up every day thinking about it because I know there's some child in some corner of Missouri that if we don't do the right thing around broadband, they're never going to make it to the University of Missouri, anywhere else, because they don't have the educational. You've got some school districts that, I know the governor's done a lot of work in this, and I applaud that, but we still got a long ways to go. And it's not just about the schools. It's in the businesses, it's in the communities, because it enlightens. It is the same thing as rural electrification was, many years ago. And if we can convince people of that and help them see that you wouldn't want to live in darkness anymore in terms of light bulbs, you also want to live in darkness in terms of internet capacity, we can change Missouri. So you get me wrapped up on that one, John, because I am passionate on that, because I believe it is so fundamental to economy, education, and health, and moving institutions forward. The thing I will say about the University of Missouri being a partner, when we do succeed, and we will succeed at that, we're going to be seen again as somebody that did it not for our own benefit, but for the betterment of Missourians. And that's what public institutions should do. It's about the public you serve. Whether they come to your campus or not, we're all in that business. Thank you, John, for setting me up and giving me something to talk about.
Daryl?
Yeah. Well, yeah, John, that was great that you set up that meeting.
You gonna set me up again, Daryl?
That's right. But it was I heard the meeting went well yesterday. I apologize for not being able to attend. But as you continue to have that type of engagement, Marshall, whether it's at WordAct or the Greenlee Research Center, all those different great outstate facilities that we have, or whether it be urban or rural, please continue to invite the curators. All of us won't be able to come, but maybe one or two of us can come, and we'd really enjoy being able to be a part of that, because engagement is so key and important. I think the curators need to be seen like that. And I know you guys have all done a great job. Some of us are relatively new, but we really want to get out there as well.
And Daryl, thank you, and we will. I will make sure you know where we're going to be and where things are going on. That's an easy thing for us to do. Mark McIntosh is sitting back here. Mark spent 2 days with me in Northwest Missouri recently. He learned the term windshield time, and Mark's laughing back there, but we had a good time. And I think Mark will tell you, to have families come up to you and tell you their story of what it means to have a university, an extension system that's in their backyard, what that means to them is powerful. You never want to walk away from that, because that is a uniqueness we have here. And I will say this too, Daryl, in regards to that. You talked about the enterprise that we have with research centers. That's a phenomenal thing. That's a jewel we have. And we need to, I know it costs a lot to do it, but we've got to figure out how to keep that going, because that is imprint in Missouri that people can touch. They may never come to Columbia, but they can go to WordAct.
Yep.
And
our signs are out there.
It's everywhere.
It's great.
It's everywhere, and it's a great emblematic. And we want to use those centers. One of the things we're talking about now on campus some is how do we engage that as a center of learning, not only for agriculture but for engineering. And can we use it for STEM education? And yes, we can. And can we use it for other institutions? Absolutely. And so but again, we got to have that conversation to figure out how to pull that together.
Now, again, this is a time when, if any of the general officers or chancellors or other folks here have any thing that they'd like to raise or agree on or disagree on, this is a time to do it. I don't know, Gary, if you wanted to weigh in on broadband. I think
Marshall probably covered it.
We're working with them, and we look forward to working with them more.
Yeah.
Can I make one statement? I don't know if this is on or not, but oh, it's on, okay. I want to praise Marshall and also Extension in another realm. We were going to lose the Storytelling Festival, which is a great event in the St. Louis region. They came to the rescue of that. And then Campus Compact, which is a national organization headquartered in Springfield, Missouri State University, was eliminating their investment in that, and Extension came to the rescue of that. So these are two major efforts that, thank you, Extension.
I might say about Campus Compact, so you know what that means, and Chancellor Cartwright and I were talking about this yesterday. We have got the agreement now. We'll sign it next week. What that will mean is it will give us connectivity centrally with all of higher education. Campus Compact is a network that promotes higher education, civility in terms of public discourse, service learning, lots of things. We're going to sign that agreement next week. And that's going to link us with all the community colleges, public, private, anybody beyond high school, basically, in all of the Missouri imprint. And that'll give us an opportunity to network with them in new and different ways, which I think is really a part of what I hear you guys talking about a lot in terms of partnership and collaboration. It's going to put us in that hub of being able to do that in a different way.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Well, Marshall, thank you, your team. Do we have a question out there? I hear a. Nothing.
No question for me. Great job, Marshall.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
That completes the critical issue discussion on your agenda. Next, we'll move to the good and welfare of the board. There is an agenda item that I want to raise that is not on the written agenda, and I'm going to ask, just a moment, Courtney, I want to ask you to present a matter, but this is an issue that Courtney, our student representative, has mentioned to several of us over the last couple of days, and it has to do with a program that she's involved with called It's On Us. And I believe that Tori is perhaps here by now, maybe?
Yes. There are some students
Tori
on
Schaefer is here, I think. Tori, can you stand? I know that, but anyway, this is a program, a national program that came out of the White House in 2015, and is basically an effort, a nationwide effort, to address sexual assault on college campuses and in changing the culture of cultural engagement on the campuses having to do with sexual assault. So, Courtney, I know that you want to introduce Tori and also to explain why this is on the agenda.
Most definitely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Chairman just stated, It's On Us is the National Sexual Assault Awareness Campaign that started in the White House 3 years ago. It is focused on raising awareness for the epidemic of sexual assault on the college campus. The aim of the campaign is to empower survivors and their supporters to take action that implements cultural change. Currently, the Mizzou campus is the biggest chapter in the nation. There's over 100 student members ranging from athletes to different members of student organizations. Additionally, the Mizzou chapter is the biggest active advocacy group on the campus. It's On Us has multiple campus partners, including Green Dot, which is the Campus Bystander Intervention Program, the Honors College, and the Title IX office. It's On Us conducts semester programming like Weeks of Action and Days of Action, focused on educating students about campus resources and raising awareness. The Mizzou chapter has been recognized by the White House for their efforts, and students at UMKC and UMSL are currently starting to organize their own chapters. It's On Us at Mizzou was the first chapter of It's On Us to host a game raising awareness about sexual assault in a D1 athletic program. Additionally, they have a commercial that regularly airs on the SEC network. In addition, the chapter fundraised over $10,000 last year, and they are expected to double that number in this upcoming year. Now, the support of the curators is important for a numerous amount of reasons. However, I'll highlight some of the most important. First, it would allow the UM system to be one of the first systems to sign on to this type of program. It would also give Mizzou's chapter the ability to program with students from the other system schools. It would make the national It's On Us present a bigger name speakers to come to campus. It would allow It's On Us Mizzou to host a regional conference with other SEC schools. And lastly, it would show support for sexual assault awareness and the work students have been doing. Lastly, I just want to thank the efforts by all the students at the different campuses and those that traveled to the board meeting here today. If you can stand when I say your name, Tori Schaefer, Matt Burke, Taylor Tutton, along with our staff advisor, Chris Walters. Thank you all for your efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion, comments, or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Curators go on record in supporting the activities of the University of Missouri-Columbia chapter, and that we recognize the importance of the It's On Us organization, and that we further pledge our support to help that throughout all 4 campuses.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll have a vote. Cindy, would you call the roll on the vote?
Curator Burnsick?
Yes.
Curator Chapman?
Yes.
Curator Farmer?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes?
Curator Steelman,
Yes.
Curator Sunbolt.
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney, for bringing this to the attention of the board, and thank all of you for being present with us today. I know you traveled a distance. And Matt, you're also serving in another capacity on one of our committees we just appointed. You just gave me a That's right. Thank you. Anything else on the public agenda for the good of the welfare of the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Curator Burnsick,
Yes.
Curator Chapman,
Yes.
Curator Farmer,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Lehman,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes?
Curator Steelman,
Yes.
Curator Sunbolt.
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Okay, we're now back into executive session, which was recessed yesterday.
Same room.
Same room.